It's 9:01. Let's get her going on Dave's Gone By.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
There goes the Daverhood.
And there was much rejoicing.
Didn't your meds kick in yet?
We got David Lefkowitz here. He's a Long Island arts guy. He's got his own radio show.
I want you all to really enjoy a wonderful program done by a fine artist.
A glorious thing of unparalleled beauty.
Dave's Gone By. Dave is one of my very favorite broadcasters, so keep on listening to Mr. Dave.
Tropical hot dog night. Like two flamingos in a fruit fight. Every color of day. Whirling around at night.
So tell all your Facebook friends, all your family, your enemies, we're here. And we're here live on Dave's Gone By. Well, there goes the Daverhood. Good morning, everybody. And welcome to the 662nd episode of the Dave's Gone By Facebookio program of the stream with me, Dave Lefkowitz, here live on this Saturday, August 4th, I was going to say 1998. Tells you where my mind is, because I've been doing all this archive stuff on a site that I work on. But no, it's 2018, of course, and we're calling this one SWEENY Odd. There's a little play on words there, because our guest in the Daverhood a bit later on is going to be the director Ethan McSweeny. Now, he's directed off-Broadway, bunch of stuff, directed regionally. He directed The Best Man on Broadway, and now he has taken over a theater. I mean, he's not taken it over. He's been asked to come in and be the artistic director of a theater in Virginia that does a ton of Shakespeare. And they do Shakespeare in a building that was conceived to be the building that William Shakespeare used indoors. So it's not like the Globe in England. Shakespeare actually had an indoor space, who knew, during, I guess, the winter months. So they've recreated that. It's in Stanton, Virginia, and Ethan McSweeny is going to be the artistic director there. He's just taken it over. So he will be a guest on Dave's Gone By to talk about his directing prior to now, and also what it takes to be an artistic director of a theater company, and one that specializes in Shakespeare all the way now in 2018. And he will be interviewed, of course, by the one, the only, the Jewish Rabbi Sol Solomon. And if you know Rabbi Sol and you listen to our show every week, or as often as you can, you know just what a special interviewer he can be. So he'll be with us. Not only that, Rabbi Sol will be doing his rabbinical reflection. He hasn't done that in a couple of months. I think not since our Tony Awards show. But every once in a while he likes to come on here and do a rabbinical reflection. It's a mini sermon about either something in the news or society, or in this case, he's just going to be telling jokes and then giving a little bit of a Jewish spin to them and their interpretations. He kind of likes to call himself Sigmund Freud in that respect. But yes, Rabbi Sol is back twice today, talking to Ethan McSweeny and also telling jokes in his rabbinical reflection. Also, by the way, welcome to some of the folks who have been signing on to watch us live on this Saturday. Michael and Lana and Art Paul. Now, every week, Art Paul sends us notification that he's got new music, because he's a street performer and singer in the Madison, Wisconsin area. So every week he's got a new MP3 out, he's putting out a new album, so he's going to be appearing somewhere. So just look for Art Paul Schlosser on the internet and go find what he's doing, because there's always new music coming from him. And welcome to Nate, and welcome to Matt, and I'm hoping a whole bunch more people log on for this new show. Now, yes, we do look a little different today here in the Daverhood. In fact, we're not in our usual Daverhood for a couple of reasons. Well, one basic reason, that my darling and adorable wife Joyce has left me for a couple of days. She's at a conference in, she was in New York for one day and then off to Philadelphia, where she's at an ASA conference, which has to do with sociology. So, yay, and pressing the flesh and hanging with an old friend of hers. So, miss her terribly, both at home and also on this program, because she usually joins me for the first half hour to an hour or so where we do gritty crimes and old times and we just kind of banter. So not only is Joyce not here in my non-proverbial bosom and physically here, but she also had to take my laptop. And I had to rejigger and figure out a new way to do the program this week because, as you know, over the past few months, we've been concentrating our focus on this radio program on Facebook, as opposed to quote-unquote terrestrial radio, which is what we've been doing for, 15 years, and also podcasting, etc. So had to get and grab a different computer in a different place to do our show. Oh my goodness. I wonder, please tell me, I thought this might be my darling, adorable wife calling, but this actually might be a spam caller. Let's do this. You are on the air. Hello? Hello?
Hi, this is Comcast calling from 267
Oh.
416010 about your recent call to Comcast customer service.
Yes, they were lovely.
Not a sales call. We would appreciate your feedback on a few brief questions.
Okay. Let's do this.
This call may be recorded for quality control purposes only.
Your call is being recorded, for my purposes.
You recently completed or attempted a transaction within the Comcast customer service phone system?
Did I?
Yes, press 1. No, press 2.
Oh, yes, I paid the bill. Okay. Let's do 1.
Thinking about your recent experience with our automated phone system and using a scale of 0 to 10.
Oh, so many numbers.
Not at all likely, and 10 is extremely likely. How likely are you to recommend Xfinity from Comcast to friends and family?
Oh, somebody pick a number.
Followed by the pound key.
I can, 6. Decisions. Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, but we did not record the pound key entry. Please re-enter your answer followed by the pound key.
I love this. All right, let's do that 6 again. 6 pound.
Please tell us the main reason you gave a rating of 6 for your likelihood to recommend Xfinity from
Prostate trouble. No, just kidding.
Finished speaking, please press the pound key.
Paid my bill online, went fine, thank you very much. I hit the pound key every freaking time. Okay.
Affect your overall likelihood to recommend Xfinity from Comcast. If it decreased a
Well, you call me on a Saturday morning during my show. How likely do you think I'm going to recommend you?
not change, press 3. Increased a little, press 4. Or increased a lot, press 5.
Oh, it's 3 pound. There we go. By the way, welcome to Frank and Paul and Monique and Rick.
Press 1.
What?
Otherwise, press 2 to continue.
I'm going to say goodbye to you now. Wait, no, let's continue. Found comedy.
The time to let us know what you think. We appreciate your
All right, goodbye. Anyway, and here I thought it was my darling wife calling in, but she's actually physically walking around the conference in Philadelphia right now. So instead I get pre-recorded message, and I was so hoping it was the phone call that I get 2 or 3 times a day. That is pure spam. That is completely, your credit card is not in trouble. However, if you want to lower your rate and it's a complete fake call, they spoof the numbers on your phone if you ever get these. And for a while, I was either just ignoring them, which is, of course, what my wife wish I would do, or if you try and say you hit a number where they take you off your list, or that number off of their list, doesn't really work because then they just spoof a different number, so they're calling you from a different number with the same thing. So now I mess with them. I'm kind of like that comedian who did special ed, and he invented that character of special ed to mess with telemarketers and these fake callers. And I don't do that character, but I will mess with them, and they call daily, pretty much, and a couple of times a day, and I just get into it with these people who are definitely either their operators are from Pakistan or Karachistan or wherever. Not that I'm being in any way racist about them in a Laura Ingraham way. I'm just saying that I hear the voice, and it's half the time it's the same guy. It's this one man in a boiler room somewhere in Uttar Pradesh who's picking up the phone and waiting for me to start, to say, hi, yeah, I'm calling about the credit card stuff. Well, yeah, in fact, I was telling your mother about it last night when she was going down, and then he'll be, you, because they're supposed to be nice, and I'm assuming their calls are recorded, but when they hear me, they know that I'm immediately being really filthy and obscene about them and their families, and they're like, oh, you son of a bitch, you guy, yeah, your mother, and it goes back and forth until, I can just go, boop, goodbye, and it makes my day. It gets my heart pounding a little faster. I don't know if it does it for you. I don't know if you just find them annoying and you just want to unplug your phone. Most of the time, I can't even believe I'm saying this. I almost look forward to these calls now. It's a weird thing. It's like, it's this moment of the day when I'm sitting at my computer, I'm working, I'm listening to music, I've got a ton of drudge work to do, getting my stuff ready for the semester ahead, and then I'm like, go up, have lunch, watch a little bit of a movie, work, and then the call comes. And is it from somebody offering me a job? No. Is it, from an old friend saying hi? No. It's just a random dialed phone call of spam of some company that either wants to take over my computer and have me give them my Microsoft information so that they can go plunging into the depths of my files and find credit card numbers and such, or they just want to do some credit card fraud scheme on me. Either way, I get them, and my heart goes boom, 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 like, and a lot of times it's funny. I want to be really sick funny, dark funny, say the most insulting, nasty thing in a funny way, and then my mind goes a little blank, and I end up reaching for more basic F you, I was doing this to your sister, etc., and I always feel a little disappointed when I don't get that zinger in, especially since in the months ago, when I would do this, I say something terrible, they just hang up. Now they kind of wait for it, they come back at me. So I've got to have more than one line ready to attack these telemarketer people. I've got to, I say, I saw your sister crushed by a bus last night, and I still fucked her. It's like, oh, you didn't hang up. Yeah. I hear the Indian fellow on the other line is like, oh, yeah, I do that to your mother, and I don't know why that sounded Hispanic, but don't have the greatest facility with accents here. But then I've got it's back on me, and then it's like F you, and sometimes I'll turn up like really, really electronic Husker Du just to blast them and hang the phone. But why would we go there? Oh, because I got a phone call out of the blue, but that was legitimate. That's like, you do anything with Comcast, and 24 hours later they call you back and say, how did we do? And it's like, you did fine. Now leave me alone. But don't leave me alone. All these folks who are tuning in, Frank and Paul and Monique and Rick and Richard and Gregory and Art Paul and some of the folks I can't see who tuned in before. But it's so great to see you live on this Saturday, August. Did I say August 4th? I forgot to change the date on my paperwork. Oopsie. It is, of course, August 11th because we skipped last week. We were away last weekend in a little lovely part of Colorado that's essentially, for years it was called Pingree Park, and then they changed the name because the guy who founded it was like a slave owner or some terrible mountain man who ate his children or something. But, it's still technically, everybody calls it Pingree Park, except the part that we were in was some acreage that is owned by our rival university, CSU. And it's called CSU Mountain Campus, and it really is. It's like, apparently UNC, which is the university that I work for and my wife works for, at least for the time being, they have like a cabin somewhere up near Estes Park, which is about 3 hours from here, an hour and a half or so from Fort Collins, which is a bit west and north of here. But, so UNC years ago bought a cabin that they'll probably sell to tap into their $10 million deficit. CSU has, I think, like 1,600 acres up there. So they built cabins, and they've got school groups coming there, and it's just acres of pine trees and forestry and fun and beauty. Not that I'm trying to advertise a rival school, but for the second year in a row, my darling and adorable wife Joyce was asked up there to give not a lecture, but more of a sort of interactive talk to a group about aging gracefully. Not healthy aging, because that's a phrase she doesn't like and appreciate, but what it means to age and how we look at the positive side of what it means to get older, to be in your 50s, 60s, 80s, 90s, and so forth. And it's a group that is involved, that deals with aging, and older folks come to this, and they every once in a while do a trip. So this is the second year in a row in the late summer that they all go up to this beautiful mountain campus, quite literally, in the tip of near Estes Park, called Pingree. And so we went up again this year, last Saturday. So that's why Joyce and I weren't here. Had a fabulous time, even though this time we were there for only a little over a day. We were back and forth in about 25 hours, up to the mountain and back. And it's kind of interesting because last year we went for about 2.5 or 3 days and had the most marvelous time. I mean, there are other people who are participating. So there's a person who does a yoga thing, and then there are people who do stuff where you just relaxation, and then there are nature walks and photography hikes, and you get to look at hummingbirds. I mean, it's marvelous. And last year we had never done it before, and we were there for about 2.5, 3 days, and was great. And this time we were supposed to go up for another 2 or 3 days, but we had some stuff that we couldn't do it. And I got to thinking, I'm not that much of a nature-ish person. And I really wonder, surrounded by, because it's mountains, about 8,000 feet up in the air, sky, gorgeous clouds and rocks and mountains and grass and these beautiful trees and these little flowers. I mean, it's Colorado, for gosh sakes. And I realized that if I had stayed again for 3 days, by the 2.5 day, I would be so bored off my ass. Even with yoga classes, and we had a journaling class that we were able to come for, and even with the nature hikes, because I'd be like, this was great last year, but we're walking the same path that we did last year, and okay, it's dirt, there's grass, there's pine trees. There's a whole section up there of burned out pine trees from a fire 10 years ago. And then what else? So there's the old mummy man in the mountain. Yep, saw him every day 3 years ago, back and forth 5 times to the mess hall. And so it's funny, I'm just not wired for boredom, even though I'm over 50, well over 50 now. It's like, 1 day, fabulous. I think 2 days would have been great, but there's no TV. And limited to no internet service. So you can't just sort of log on and use the interwebs, or even, for the most part, use your telephone. I'm an oldish, smartish. My phone is not so smart anymore. It was a smartphone at one point. Now it's kind of a dumb to borderline retarded phone. Still works, still does what I need it to do. But, you go anywhere where everybody else gets 3 bars. I get no bars. It's kind of a dry town in my telephone. So, it just occurred to me that as much as I was kind of disappointed that we didn't go for a longer stretch and relaxed and hiked all around and saw the same, and we saw the hummingbirds because they have a line, almost looks like a clothesline, with all these hummingbird feeders dangling from it. And last year, you could get up not too close because they were doing some kind of experiment. They were tracking and charting the motions and patterns of the hummingbirds. This time, they still had the bird feeders up, but you could just go look and observe. And the amazing thing about hummingbirds is that from not even that far away, but just a few feet further away, they look like insects. That's the way they move. They literally look like bees, or even faster than that, like darning needles or bugs that go zit, 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 right into the thing, and their little long peckers go into the water, and then they zip, 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 and fly away into a bush and then back. You get a little closer, So it's almost scary when you're further away. And then you walk up like 5 feet closer to them, and then the most gorgeous creatures. There's iridescent green, and they're so tiny, they're so adorable, you don't even think they're birds, and they are. So, yeah, I could watch hummingbirds for a very long time. But grass, I can go outside this door, right here. There's a window here, actually. And oh, grass, wow, cool, yay. Trees, oh, there's a tree over there. Many grass, many trees, many mountain. Beautiful, beautiful. For first day, still beautiful. Second day, third day, it's like internet, please. Work to do, movie to watch, TV, something else, something. I guess you can always bring music and iTunes, but it's kind of just, and it would be different, like if it were a different section of the park, of Estes, or if we'd gone lower down to the Mishawaka thing and saw a concert there. But when you're walking over the same paths back and forth, after a while you just have that kind of like, okay, you know. And this happens to me. This happened to me, when was it? Wow, 5 or 6 years ago now, when my wife and I and a colleague of hers took a group of students to Italy, right? Italy. We'll go back to Italy in a heartbeat. And we saw Roma, and we went to L'Aquila, and we also spent a couple of days in Florence. Florence is the most gorgeous place on earth of the places that I have seen. I thought Prague was, but Prague is a man-made beautiful. Florence is just stunningly magnificent. I mean, the bridge there. You know, if we do, Joyce and I ever do have a 25th anniversary, I would love to go back to that bridge and repropose and do it right there at sunset, because it's friggin' Venice. We were in Venice too, but I'm talking about Florence. And at the same time, we were in Florence for about 3.5 days, and Florence is not that big, especially when you're with a group and you don't go wandering that much. And then, you know, it's, the Duomo. And if you get lost, it's like, where's the Duomo at? Oh, you see that? There's the Duomo. Big cathedral thing with the Domo on the Duomo. I said, Duomo's over there. We're good. So by the 2.5 day, it's like, we're walking. Let's go in a different place. Let's go walking around this side street and through that side street, and then 2.5 minutes later, you're back at the fucking Duomo. I don't know how Florence does that, but after, as gorgeous as it was, even then, after 3 days, I was like, the Duomo. Now, I don't need to see the Duomo again. And I got distracted by, the guys, mostly immigrants, who are selling toys on the street and watching the people, rather than the actual, here we are, the friggin' Duomo again. So I guess the upshot of all this is I need new, a new path, new direction. That's just the way perhaps I've always been. Explains my lack of patience in so many things, kind of explains my personality in a lot of ways. And yet, when I'm working, I don't necessarily mind repetition. You know, I put out a journal 21 times a year, and it's perfectly fine for me to sit down with a beverage and some music playing and be like, okay, I've done this 100 times, 101, okie dokie, you know, and just do it. And it doesn't bother me. It's rather pleasant, repetitive work. And yet for my free time, for my playtime, as it were, I don't know. You could literally take me to Mount Rushmore, and then at Mount Rushmore, bring in the living ghosts of, like, Charlie Chaplin, George Washington, Moses, and while that's happening, play, like, my favorite music in the world, and bring in a Technicolor sunset in neon, and I'd be like, holy crap. And then if the same thing happened the next day, and I was like, there's Chaplin again. Well, no, I had a great conversation with him yesterday, but we're going to still have to talk to him about. He's dead. His last movie was 80 years ago. Okay. And Moses, yeah. Well, I know, I haven't been obeying every single commandment. He's going to get me on that. And that sunset again, I need glasses. That's me. I don't know if it's you, ladies and gentlemen, but that's me, Dave Lefkowitz, here, doing Dave's Gone By live on this Saturday, August 11th, 2018. Welcome, by the way, to Brenda and Eileen and Carla and Joe and Howard and John and Karen from my old library, and who else? Can I scroll? On this computer, I can scroll up a little bit. Rick and Richard and Gregory and James and Matt and Art and, oh my goodness. Welcome one, welcome all to the Sweeney Odd edition of the Dave's Gone By Facebookio program of the stream, featuring me, Dave Lefkowitz. So what else happened this week? Since we're not, the one thing is, and I know so many of you tune in to hear me bantering with my darling and adorable wife Joyce, who is, as I said, away at a conference, and doing Greeley Crimes and Old Times. Unfortunately, well, not fortunately, in deference to her, I've gotten so used to doing that segment with her that I really don't want to do it this week without her. So we're going to table Greeley Crimes and Old Times until next. I know. You're sad. Here's a hanky. Dry your tears. That's it. Dry. And oh man, you fella, you should shake at the urinal after you. Okay, but anyway, so we're not doing that this week, but we got other stuff to do. Remember, we got Ethan McSweeny talking to Rabbi Sol a little later in the show. We will have the return of Dave's Big Dick Shinary. Yeah, it's not that kind of show. This is where I will at random thumb through this 75,000 definition dictionary and come up with a word and then kind of do what I just did about CSU Mountain Campus, but with a random word, and talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes. An anecdote, a story, something that pops into my mind involving that word. As a matter of fact, let me do it now. Let me find the word, and that'll give me some time to come up with something to think about and talk about. So, here we go. There's no trickery here. There's nothing pre-planned. Oh, I love that. Don't you love that sound of a book? Listen. Sounds like a hummingbird, doesn't it? Okay. I'm ready, and I'm going to point my finger wherever my finger lands. That is the word that I will do on Dave's Big Dictionary. First time this ever happened, I didn't know they had this. I've actually opened and put my finger on, maybe I can do this, but this is literally purely at random, out of a book that is, how many pages long is this? It's about 930-something pages of this dictionary. My finger literally lands on a chart, the periodic table of elements. There it is, right there, the periodic table. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do that. Okay, so that will be the Dave's Big Dictionary word. It's a phrase, I guess. Periodic table. Let me see if they've got any. This isn't the most recent dictionary. I'm going to need my glasses actually to see it, and I don't have them. Oh yeah, I do. Hold on. This is Dave getting old now. Here we go. The last one, by the way, is number 103, LR. I'm assuming that's something called lorium. No idea. Number 1 is still helium. So after all these years, I don't know how helium does it, but it's still number 1 with a bullet. Helium, number 1 on the periodic table. Maybe there's some other. There's Fecesium, and that's been number 2 for a long time. Okay. So anyway, periodic table will be on Dave's Big Dictionary today. We'll also go inside Broadway. Notice as I turn here for news of the Rialto. And we'll talk about the theater. A lot of theater news to talk about this week. We'll have our Colorado Limerick of the Damned that we do every week. This is a cool thing. Since I was talking about going to different places in Colorado, we've been doing a filthy, obscene, dirty limerick every week, each one based on a city or town in Colorado. And this particular episode will feature the town of Bethune. Bethune, which has, at least at the last census count in 2000, only 225 people in it. Probably since we've had such a boom in Colorado, I'm guessing in the past 18 years, it's reached at least 230. So our Colorado Limerick of the Damned will honor Bethune later in the program. I'm sorry, I've still got this morning throat. Oh, and Rabbi Sol, I mentioned him, reminding you that he will be doing a rabbinical reflection featuring some jokes. Rabbi Sol is going to tell some jokes, and he will give their, as I said, it's not so much Sigmund Freud, it's more a Sigmund Freud interpretation to them in a very Jewish way, as Rabbi Sol does. And, how could I forget, we will have, and that's why this is such a special episode, not just because we'll have Ethan McSweeny here, but because we will be reading once more from A Cow for Hansel. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, not only that, this is it. This is the last chapter. Oh, somebody just gave me, Tony, who watches the show every week, and it's great to see you, Tony. He doesn't give a thumbs up for our great guest. He doesn't give a thumbs up for me, or for talking about Broadway or Colorado, but I mentioned A Cow for Hansel. And Tony's like, yes, yes. Well, the good news and bad news, Tony, is that we're up to the last chapter. This is it. This is the final it. And look what it's called. Not to give anything away, but it's called The Beautiful Cow. I think, I could be wrong now, but I don't think so. He gets his cow. Hansel gets his bovine. So, ladies and gentlemen, the exciting finale of A Cow for Hansel coming up on Dave's Gone By. If that isn't reason enough to keep tuned in today, Saturday, August 11th, 2018, I don't know what is. So all of that happening on Dave's Gone By. What else did I want to... Oh, I still even have some more stuff to talk about before we get to Inside Broadway. So first of all, as I was complaining about, it's just been a horrible summer. Now, not tragic, thank God, at least to this point. There's still a month to go in actual summertime. But no, knock wood, cross fingers, whatever you do, no deaths. But boy, oh boy, just week after week, negative things happening this summer. I had a bad back issue. Joyce had a brief health issue. What else? Let's see. Magazine that I've been writing for 12 years decided to pull the plug. Not on me, but on the whole magazine. What else happened? There were a couple of things. I don't want to get into some school stuff. And another big one was just a couple of months ago, we were out at Target shopping. We parked in the parking lot, and this being Colorado, there were a couple of rain clouds in the air. We're in Target, and I talked about this, and suddenly it sounds like bowling balls hitting the roof of Target. We come out, and we realize that it wasn't a rainstorm, it wasn't a big old downpour. We had hail, and our car was sitting right in the middle of the parking lot, totally unprotected, and it was just literally ground zero for hail. Little ping pong ball sized, and even a little bigger than that, not quite baseball. But, you got ping pong balls falling from the sky at a rapid rate in the middle of, friggin'... It was like the first or second day of summer that this happened, that we got hail in Colorado, right here in Greeley. We came out to the car, and at first we thought, oh, wow, the rain makes it look like our hood and our top are all bumpy. That's what rain can do. And then we see the divots, divot after divot after divot after divot, and we're like, oh my God. We've been here 9 years. We've had hailstorms. We never had the car out. It never affected us. There we go. And we figure, hey, the car's going to be fine. I mean, it runs perfectly. It was not affected in its mechanisms by this storm. It's just the hood's all bumpy. Bumps and dings on the top and on a little bit on the sides. But our provider Geico says no, we call that a total loss, and we can either write you a check for this amount and you put it towards a new car, and as if a new car costs $7,000, or you can keep the car and take this amount. And we're like, we'll keep the car and take this amount because we hope to put another 100,000 miles. We don't have 100,000 miles on the car. I don't do that much driving. I'm from New York. So that on some level was the good news, and hopefully by November, December, we'll fix at least the hood of the car so it looks a little more presentable, because the hood is the worst part, and we have who knew? Subarus are so wonderful in so many ways, but if you get a lighter colored Subaru, it not only takes hail damage worse, but looks like it takes hail damage worse. Go figure. So maybe around November and December, there'll be more material to fix cars, and we'll be able to pull an old Subaru hood, have it painted and something, and spend $1,000 to $1,500 to make it look a little bit more presentable out of the $5,500 they gave us. To say, hey, oops, you're not going to be able to really resell your car for anything, but you can still drive it. Why don't you still drive it? Here's some money. Fine. Thank you, Geico. Made me kind of wonder about that other provider when they say, oh, yeah, we'll replace the value of your new car. Really? Yeah? Going to give me $25,000 for a new Subaru? Really? Who knows? The reason I'm bringing all this up is, no, we haven't had our car fixed yet, but wouldn't you know, because we're talking to some other people, we're not the only couple in northern Colorado to be affected by hail in the storm about 2 months ago. Right? Because there's other folks that we talked to, and one of them said, hey, you know what? Yeah, I got hail damage too on the car, but I'm not even going to look at it. I'm not even going to touch it. I'm not even calling the insurance people because the season has just started. It was the first or second day of the summer. Why? We could get hit again. It is Colorado. We get crazy weather sometimes. And so we're like, okay, I guess that makes sense. We couldn't have our car fixed if we wanted to because so many people were affected and everybody's looking for replacement hoods and roofs. So guess what? Earlier this week, I think it was either Sunday or Monday, we're home, cars in the garage, we're sitting there watching TV, and then open the screen to look out on our porch, and there it is. Hail at the size of or bigger than the ones that we got 2 months earlier, and just pounding down, forming these rivers of white all along our street. And I'm looking also, feeling really bad, looking down our road and seeing people whose cars are parked in the driveway. And I almost want to call them if I had their phone numbers and say, open your garages! Don't leave the car because you're gonna... And of course, at that point, it's too late. And now we're gonna be up against not only all these people from the storm back in June who need their cars fixed, but all these people now from this past week who need their car fixed. And I was talking about the annoying phone calls that come in all week. This week, on top of the robo-calls that I get, there's hello, yes, yeah, we're from so-and-so roofing, and there's hail down. I'm like, talk to our HOA. Hi, we're calling from the roofing company here, and we've had hail damage. I talk to my HOA. Click. I mean, literally 2 or 3 times a day that is happening, and I understand they've got to be opportunist, and there is hail damage. And what is kind of cool is that our HOA, we live in a townhouse community, is dealing with it, and they sent these guys over. This is what I'm really leading towards. This is absolutely staggering to me of how amazing it is that we live in 2018. Because they send these 2 guys over, and they're kind of going door to door, and when they see people out, they say, hey, don't be afraid, we are legit. You're housing people. Talked to us and asked us to come here. Your insurance people, travelers, told us, and they're back out there this morning. The guy with a red beard, and they're walking around. They are here to assess and fix. This is the amazing part. I don't know if you live in a part of the country where this happens. So when a week ago they started to assess the damage to the roofs of our townhouse community, of what the recent hailstorm did. So apparently they got on a ladder, went up to one roof, and looked and poked around and saw what, and there's been damage done for sure for houses here. And they see the marks and the breaks and the tears and whatever else hail the size of ping pong balls does. And they go down the ladder, they make their notes, I'm sure they take some pictures, etc. They go up to another house and they do the same thing. They look, hail, oh yeah, bumps, divots, rivulets, this has to be changed, this roof stuff has to be replaced, so forth. Come down the ladder, do their thing. For all the other houses on our block, in our community, they're not going up the ladder to look at the houses anymore. This is fantastic. And I haven't seen them do it, but this is what they say they do. They send up a drone. They actually program a drone with a camera on it to go up above the house, float around, take video. I assume it's more video than pictures, because now they know the kind of damage they're looking for. They've eyeballed it on 2 of our houses. Now, they don't have to be there. They just have to kind of be like, up we go, click, 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 and report the damage back via drone. I think maybe it's me, but I think that's the most amazing, wonderful, a little bit scary, a little bit 1984, a little bit like, if I had a drone and there's a cute girl in the shower a few houses down, I'd be like, yeah, roof damage. I'm here for roof damage. But no, it's pretty amazing that this is just a thing, that they do this, that this was inconceivable, or as Wallace Shawn would put it, inconceivable, 5 years ago. Or maybe, well, they conceived it 5 years ago, 10 years ago. This idea of, oh yeah, no, you got a guy to get up there just to poke around with a flashlight and look. And it's like, send up this little airplane. It's the satellite idea made local. And they're doing it. And it isn't being done by Elon Musk. It's being done by your local insurance and roofing people. Fabulous. I don't know. I would love to hear some thoughts on this. I would love to, if you want to chime in, or all these folks folks who have tuned in, like David and my friend Fred from Friendy. Happy birthday, Fred, by the way. Fred and Lou and Joseph and Warhol and Chauncey. Oh, it's so good. I'm seeing now that we're heading towards fall, I'm seeing a lot more of the so-called regulars, my beloved Daverhoodlums, coming back. So welcome to all of you, of course. Forgive the morning frog throat. But I don't know, do you feel creepy about that? Do you see maybe in 10 years we won't need window washers anymore? They'll be able to send up like a drone with a rag and a squeegee. I mean, no, seriously. Imagine if you could design a drone with mechanical extended arms that has a mop in its hand, a little soap on it, and just goes and your window's done. Because the windows in our living room, which is upstairs, haven't been washed in a year and a half. And I'm going to get up there. I'm not going to risk my sacroiliac and other parts of my being to have a cleaner window. Wouldn't it be fantastic? Why is this not necessarily possible? Why can't Donald Trump's Space Force work on window washing? That'd be a start, right? Instead of getting people up to Mars or Venus or putting things in Uranus, why not start small? Take the drones and make them really day-to-day useful. Wash the windows on big buildings, It's a rescue babies. Remember they had that immigrant guy a couple of months ago where this toddler was hanging off a balcony somewhere of this building, and the toddler was going to fall down, and this guy was like a human fly, and he crawled up and he saved the baby? Who needs to risk 2 lives? Well, 1 life to do that. There ought to be like a baby drone. The drone that's got a little cushion seat and a nappy in it. And it's like, oh, baby, hanging. Wah, wah, wah. Okay, let go. Assuming the baby is of an age to do that. Which if he's hanging from a bar, he probably could. And it's like, plop, into a little bassinet in a drone? It's horrible to say, but imagine if Eric Clapton had, and he could have afforded one back then, imagine if he had a baby drone, and it worked fast enough where the baby starts to fall, he says, drone, go, and zoop, zoop, There would be no tears in heaven, there'd be drones in the heavens. It's a thought. This is where my mind goes when my wife is away, ladies and gentlemen. Scary stuff, I'll tell you. But anyway, welcome to all these folks who are watching and listening in the Daverhood today. Is there anything else before I start the festivities? I talked about the hail. I talked about the insurance. I talked about CSU Mountain Campus. Speaking of the world that we live in. My good friend Lisa from our writing group says, I know Uranus would be easier to visit than the sun would be. Mm-hmm. You're not being as disgusting as I am, and I thank you for that, Lisa. The only person I want visiting Uranus is my doctor. But anywho, this is the other really incredibly cool thing that I forgot to mention about CSU Mountain Campus. And it ties in with, oh gosh, we live in a world of drones and great inventions. They were handing these out to all the participants and the people who were coming to this special lecture and yoga, meditation, journaling, seminar thing. Retreat. It's a retreat, basically. Check this out. Actually, I'm holding it upside down, sort of. Or not. Because this is fantastic. I'm sorry, let me just have another beverage. Behold, ladies and gentlemen, is this the greatest thing ever? This is a combination pen and back scratcher. Pen, back scratcher. They didn't have this in 1940. They didn't have, or if they did, it was probably yay big. So as you have to go up here, and then if you're writing. But look, and the beautiful part, the genius part, the part that would have gotten this on like $1 million on that show, The Shark Tank. If you want to scratch your back. Ho! Ha! Look, behold, the wonders of American civilization. Well, probably Chinese, actually, or Taiwanese. But it lengthens, it extends like an umbrella. And then you can just go, ooh. Get all the way in the places that you need, front and back. And then, if you want to write, down it goes, and behold, it's a pen. If Alexander Hamilton had one of these, or not even, who's the big signature guy? Because Hamilton's on everybody's brain because of Broadway, but what is it? John Hancock. John Hancock, imagine, it's miserable, it's 90 degrees, hot as hell in Philadelphia when they're signing the Declaration, and he's like, he's got the powdered wig and the powder is going down his thing and it's all caked on and he's uncomfortable. Imagine if, John, I just said his name and it went out of my head. And it's killing the joke. John Hancock. Imagine John Hancock is like, well, hold on, gentlemen. 1 moment, please. Oh, that is so much better. Yes, just get the spot. Now, what, yes. I was going to sign very tiny, but I feel so good now. John Hancock. Anybody want to buy some insurance? So, what a wonderful world, to quote Rufus Wainwright, what a world we live in that creates this. Oh boy. So I was so happy to get that from CSU Mountain Campus. Didn't see a lot of animals there. I didn't mention this. We the year before, we saw a couple of deer, really beautiful. We did see little pikas and little ground squirrel, chipmunky type things, and those are always fun to watch darting around. Happily, we did not see a bear. We were told that a bear had come up the day before and ripped out a screen on one of the buildings. I think that, that seems like more of a folk tale rumory thing. Because if a bear had come up that close to camp, sometime after midnight and started destroying things, I think there would have been a bit more panic and a lot more people going away from from this retreat and from these lodgings. But they did say, oh, yeah, no, he was poking around, and you keep your windows closed at night, and you don't keep food in your room, and because they do get bears up there. And when the bears are hungry, and they're less, of course, they're being squeezed out of their forestry, and they're less afraid of humans. Anyway, we didn't see one. Didn't really want to see one, quite honestly. So, and finally, last thing, again, an amazing time we live in. A time, as I said, of Space Force or no Space Force, but of this, of drones that check your roofs for damage, and Joyce and I went to a wedding this week. And it wasn't when we went to the retreat last weekend, and we didn't have to drive hours and hours and get dressed up. Didn't even really have to buy, probably should get a gift, but all we had to do was make sure we had our pajamas on. Didn't even really have to do that. Open our computer, log in, and there was a wedding. A friend of ours, a colleague, I won't say the full name, but Mazel Tov to Katie and your new husband. Out of the blue, 3 days early, or 3 or 4 days earlier, we get notification of this colleague, this lovely young woman that we know. She's like, oh yeah, we're getting married on Saturday. You're all invited. I'm like, okay, where is it? It's some church somewhere, and we can't go. We're here. We're dealing with all this other stuff, and Joyce is going out of town. And then it's like, oh, by the way, yeah, everybody can attend if you have a computer. Because the ceremony, the whole wedding, and the whole idea of the wedding was to broadcast it live on YouTube, which she did. So we log on, and of course, this being 2018, there's computer problems. So our computer was fine, and so we log in, I think it was 10:30 in the morning, and we're waiting, and now you start to get the people saying, congratulations, and because people are able to post their messages, and then they start making jokes as it's 5 minutes is passing, 10 minutes is passing, and all you're getting is like a still image, and then there's a test run, and they start testing it, and still that doesn't work, and now it's about 10 to 11 already, and people are like, hey, great wedding, because you start to get sarcastic after a while, but what do you know? You reload it eventually, they figured it out, and there's this wedding. 2 people, the bride, the groom, and the officiator was her dad, which was kind of nice. I guess he's a pastor or some kind of mail order marriage ceremony maker kind of guy. And nobody else is there. There's 3 people and a camera person. 3 people in a field in Loveland, in a park. And 60, 70 guests. Nobody has to be fed. You don't have to try canapes. She was in a very nice wedding kind of dress. He was in a suit. But all the other, no band, right? No wedding photographers beyond this camera. And all of us just kind of like, oh, well, this is, yeah. And the ceremony took all of 10 or 15 minutes. It was touching. It was nice vows. And then they were like, yay, we did it. They kissed the bride. Married. Boom. Huh. And people spend, of course, upwards of 6 figures on weddings now. And here it was. This was an actual, real wedding. I'm sure they did the City Hall thing weeks before, and they wanted to actually get married in New Orleans, and that didn't work out. So they came back home. They got her dad to officiate, and in front of family and friends, boom, married. And we all got to see it and take part. And they've got the video forever. They'll save it. They've got it on YouTube. So, what an amazing time we're in. For all the talk of how, quote-unquote, terrible things are in certain ways, and how everybody's afraid of Trump and the Republicans and the administration and the Supreme Court, and with good reason in a lot of ways, and how we're all spinning ourselves into butter, just complaining and worried and screaming at the other side and hating, but in a lot of ways, these are pretty cool times. They really are. And it's certainly a cool time for me, Dave Lefkowitz, to talk to you. Now you can help me on this, too. You can either chime in now or email me later, davesgoneby@aol.com. But I'm trying to think of what to call the folks who tune in to this program, especially the regulars, and bless you for doing that. But, because we call folks who've been on the show, a lot of famous people and real talented people like Ethan McSweeny, who will be with us in a little while, they're friends of the Daverhood. That's what we call them almost from the beginning. They're friends, they're family, they're people who've been on the show. That's what we call them. I want a word for people who tune in, because you're also friends, in a way more important than even the people who appear on the show. So I'm trying to think of, there's Daverhoodies, which, okay, I kind of like that. I'm stopping myself from saying friends of the Daverhood. Daverhoodies, Daverhoodlums, which I like that one, except hoodlum has such a negative connotation. And nobody wants to be a hoodlum, but I try to, Daverhoodlums. It does roll off the tongue. So let me know if you like that one. If you have any suggestions of your own, let me know. Because I'm really stumped on coming up with a term for you guys. It'd be Dave's Gone Bygones? Let Dave's Gone Bygones be bygones? Mm-hmm. Dave's Faves? You are Dave's Faves. Possible. Anyway, that's your assignment for either the rest of the show or for the week ahead. If you think of something cool, or if you like Daverhoodlums, Daverhoodies, Dave's Faves, or have an idea of your own, let me know. And that is what I will start officially calling all the wonderful people who tune in every Saturday from 9 until noon or thereabouts, Mountain Time, to the Dave's Gone By Facebookio program of the stream. I'm Dave Lefkowitz. It is 10 o'clock in the morning right now, Mountain Time, here in Greeley, Colorado, with me, Dave. And by the way, this fell. As I said, we're doing this episode a little differently than usual. Whoopee! That's what it's supposed to look like. Let's close that back. Because my wife has my computer on her trip, so I'm doing it from actually a different location than my usual office at UNC. Oh, Lisa says denizens of the Daverhood. Denizens of the Daverhood. I like the alliteration. It's a little longish. Davizens. Keep at it. But if other people like denizens of the Daverhood, I'm willing to go there. But anyway, so this is, by the way, the floaty whoopee cushion that we got for our pool that we've used a few times this season. Not my pool. Our community has a townhouse pool. But anyway, isn't that cool? This is the whoopee cushion float. And it gives us a little more visual instead of this blank wall behind me. I hope you like it. Anyway, what are we doing on Dave's Gone By in case you more recently tuned in? Well, don't forget, Rabbi Sol Solomon talking to director Ethan McSweeny coming up. He'll be taking over a Shakespeare theater in Stanton, Virginia, or he already has. He's just getting his feet wet and planning his first season. Rabbi Sol will be talking to him. Also, Rabbi Sol will have a rabbinical reflection of jokes and their interpretations, or in his case, misinterpretations. We will have Dave's Big Dictionary, all about the periodic table. What else? We'll have StoryTime, the finale of A Cow for Hansel. That about does it, except, of course, for our weekly visit to Broadway, because, I've been a theater critic for almost 30 years now, a theater journalist, an actor, a director, a playwright, a theater educator. I've done it all, right? Not for a lot of money, not for any kind of fame, but at least I've done it. And so I do love the theater. I love talking about the theater, and that is why, as I scroll through my iTunes on this computer, come on, where's my intro? That's why I like to go every week. Where are you? Here it is. Inside Broadway. Inside Broadway, a look at theater on and off Broadway and beyond. Brought to you by Total Theater and Performing Arts Insider. Curtain going up. That's that curtain going up. Da 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 da. Do 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 do. Da da. Ba da 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 da. Yeah, Inside Broadway we go, and I know, some people love this segment. Other people are like, oh no, he's talking about theater again endlessly. For me, it's important. For me, it's the way so many TV shows and so many commercials say, oh, these are the people appearing in movies now. This movie's opening in 5 weeks. You should get ready now. And they talk about that, or they talk about music, and Kanye West is everywhere. But Broadway and the theater is as important to me, so I love sharing it with you. And I love sharing some really cool information, especially if you happen to be in New York or visiting New York. News came out about a week ago that the tickets booth at Lincoln Center, not the one over on 47th Street in Times Square, but the TKTS booth, the place where you get discount tickets to all the Broadway and some of the off-Broadway shows, they're changing their display. And what they're going to do up at the Lincoln Center booth, and again, you can go to the Lincoln Center booth and buy discount tickets to Broadway shows, not just the ones they're doing at the Vivian Beaumont Theater or their off-Broadway Lincoln Center House, but it's for all of the rest of the Broadway district, which happens to be 20 blocks lower down. Anyway, now their booth is going to display the actual prices that you'll be paying. So you can look at the board before you get up to the front of the line. You can, instead of just saying, 35% discount, and trying to think, well, what seating level is it, and how much is a regular ticket? And okay, it's 35% off, but how? And with Broadway ticket prices, what they are, let's say it's 30% off of a $100 ticket, you're still paying $70 plus fees. That's not chump change. It's not like when I was a kid in college, starting to go to Broadway all the time, and I just, I told the story before, jump on the subway from NYU after my physics class and reward myself by having a very quick lunch and then jumping on the tickets line and seeing what was there, and, I pay $14, right, or $18 to see a show on Broadway. And so whatever, it was a discount. It was half the price. It was fun. Great, sure. Now a regular price ticket to a show could be $150. So if you get 30% off, you're still paying 3 figures for that ticket. So isn't it nice, and isn't it about time that at least this one of the tickets booths is saying, okay, we're not going to play games anymore. We know ticket prices are insane. Therefore, if you come up to Lincoln Center and you want to buy Broadway tickets, you look at that board, you will see the actual price you pay, including all the fees, including the so-called restoration theater price. This is what it is. I think that's just, let the consumer know. And if the experiment works, they will do it at all the other booths. There's one still, I think, down by the World Trade Center, and of course they certainly have the one in Midtown. I just hope it doesn't scare people off. I hope that it isn't that fewer people buy tickets because they suddenly realize before they step up to the booth and have their wallets ready, and now there's people behind them, and there's a time crunch because they want to get to the theater, and suddenly the guy says $88, and it's like, $88, all right, okay, or else the guy says, well, step aside if you don't want to buy, there's people waiting. Now, they can look at the booth and go, $88, no, I don't want to see it that bad. There's this other show I'm interested in, no, that's $60, I'll do that, yeah. And they can make that decision in more of a calm state of mind, as it were. So yay to TKTS. And what's kind of funny and kind of interesting is this a shock? There has been, in the tickets booth in Midtown, a full price window. So yeah, everybody stands online and they wait for, not always a couple of hours, but they wait a while to get discount tickets to the Broadway show that they hope to see. But there is one window there where you can just buy a full price Broadway ticket to shows. I guess if you're in a time crunch and you don't want to first wait on the line at the box office in the actual theater, or you're worried it might be sold out, you can see it at TKTS and buy it there. But you're buying a full price $50 for balcony, $100, $200 ticket. Weirdly enough, that hasn't been doing a whole hell of a lot of business, and they're closing it. They're getting rid of the full price ticket booth in the TKTS booth. Not a big shock there. But anyway, I love this idea of the booth in Lincoln Center, and I hope people will take advantage of it. And I hope maybe even that producers will see that and say, hey, our show, unlike some of the other Broadway shows that are at 101% capacity, 90% capacity, our show's in the 40 or 50% capacity. Maybe, okay, I know it's supposed to be 50 or 30% discounts. What about we just put up a number up there and the tickets are going to go unsold anyway? $35. Think about it. Think about it, producers. All these people standing online, thinking of what they want to see, and yeah, maybe some of them want to, if they're lucky enough, grab a fast, quick discount ticket to Book of Mormon on a day it happens not to be sold out, or they just get lucky that way. But others are like, hey, we're in town, let's see a Broadway show, a musical, and then they see, well, this is $80, and this is, but, oh, I've read that show might be pretty good, and it's only $35. I'm in, right? Why not? Just a thought. Anywho, let's see. Want to let you know that I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Huh? Pretty good, right? No, of course I'm not saying that for myself, even though most of the time I am mad as hell. But that's a part of a speech by Howard Beale, if you all remember the movie Network, back from the 1970s, with Faye Dunaway, the Patty Chayefsky story of a news anchor on TV, played by Peter Finch back in the day, who loses it. They're about to be fired, he's being aged out, and he's just like, I want you to go to your windows, and I want you to say I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And what happens is it becomes a meme, a catchphrase. It rescues his career, makes him something of a prophet, in a way, not to mention TV star, and then it affects the fate of all these people working at the TV network. It was a dark satire, very popular in its time, very, very much of the moment. Well, Network is now going to be a Broadway play. It is going to be adapted by, Lee. Oh, I'm so sorry, I missed the first name on that. I better check my Performing Arts Insider. Let's see. It won't be in there yet because they just announced it this week. Duh. But hey, soon it'll be in this magazine. Just saying. Anyway, it's being Patty Chayefsky's screenplay is being adapted for the theater, and it's going to be directed by the very popular, very controversial wunderkind Ivo Van Hove. He did that rather controversial Crucible about 2 years ago, and is known for doing very minimalist but very kinetic spins on classic theater, like Streetcar Named Desire, etc. So Van Hove will be directing Network, and it's going to open in February at the Court Theater on Broadway. I mean, this has been in the pipeline for a while, but they made it official this week, and official that the star is Bryan Cranston, of course, from Breaking Bad and that terrific LBJ show from a couple of years ago, All the Way. What else can I tell you about it? Yeah, so a new Broadway show coming called Network with Bryan Cranston as Howard Beale. Certainly a performance, I'm sure, to watch. Now, another show that is absolutely now, almost 100% certain for Broadway, not this season, but almost surely next, is going to be the musical Moulin Rouge. It's John Logan, the guy who wrote the play Red. He's adapting Baz Luhrmann's 2001 film, with Alex Timbers directing, and it's a simple plot. It's a young poet who falls for an actress who's way above his class and station in life. And the point of it is, and the point of Luhrmann's film had to do with putting all these modern pop songs into this, I guess it would be 19th century Moulin Rouge Paris milieu. And it was a very popular cult film. Well, the show, the musical version now, tried out at Boston's Emerson Colonial Theater and opened this past week. They sent the New York Times to do a review of the show out of town. The co-chief critic of the New York Times, Ben Brantley, saw it and absolutely raved about it. He said it's a smart, shameless, extravagantly entertaining show. Even if you've seen the movie, you'll probably still be surprised by the triumphant ways in which recent pop standards have been reclaimed for the stage. So this is, with that review, and with a lot of good word of mouth among audiences, they haven't booked a theater yet, but they're like probably this close. So invariably in 2019, Moulin Rouge will come to Broadway, so you will be able to hear songs like Roxanne, Lady Marmalade, Bad Romance, and Like a Virgin. Yeah, so jukebox musical to the nth degree, probably, almost certainly coming to Broadway in a year or so from now. Now, a show whose songs, at least at the time, went into every jukebox. I mean, this was pre-jukebox era, but songs that went into the cultural vernacular and have stayed there since then. A musical called Carousel is sadly going to be leaving Broadway in just a month. They announced this week that on September 16th, Carousel, the Broadway revival with Joshua Henry playing Billy Bigelow and Jessie Mueller as Julie Jordan with Renee Fleming, she does You'll Never Walk Alone, will be closing on Broadway. And I think the problem for Carousel this year was a couple of things. First of all, it went up against My Fair Lady. And even though people assumed that Carousel would have a bit more interest in My Fair Lady, which is done everywhere all the time, although it's been about 25 years since the last Broadway My Fair Lady, this one had somehow more of the zeitgeist to it. Maybe because it was the Me Too era and was a strong woman versus Julie Jordan, who is in some ways more suppressed and weaker. Maybe My Fair Lady's tunes were a bit more popular in the popular currency. Maybe because it just got, on some level, the better and more interesting reviews. There was something a little bit fresh about this My Fair Lady, whether you liked it or not, whereas the Carousel felt a little more standard, especially compared to the Carousel that Lincoln Center did 2 decades ago, that really just, that was a revitalizing version of this great Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. I saw this Carousel, I liked it, but then again, I love Carousel. I thought Joshua Henry has a voice like, wow. I don't think he and Jessie Mueller had a lot of physical or emotional chemistry together, and I do think that hurt. The staging was a little dark, because it's a dark musical, but not terribly interesting visually, which also hurt a little bit. But, I do recommend it. It's friggin' Carousel, and very often it's sung beautifully. So if you get a chance, go see Carousel on Broadway. You have another 5 weeks to do it. And then, speaking of a show, now this is why Broadway and musicals are horse races and a roll of the dice. And no matter how many years you have watching theater and reviewing theater and studying theater history, old and new, it's always like you figure you think you know something and you know nothing at all. Well, this opening this week on Thursday night, a new Broadway musical. And the musical is Pretty Woman. Yup, it's based on the movie. This one has a score by the pop composer Bryan Adams, co-writing with Jim Vallance. The book is based on, of course, the movie with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere, and it became, a popular sensation, etc. You know the story, right? The call girl meets a rich client, etc. And I'm thinking, when they first announced this a year or two ago, I'm thinking another movie, and they're turning it into a musical, and it'll be pretty good, and they'll follow the story, and we know the story works, and a couple of songs will be good, and the rest of them will be like, why do we need? And I really didn't think an audience would go for it. I really thought, it doesn't have a real name star in the Broadway version, so who's gonna really be that interested in a musicalization of Pretty Woman? Because again, what is every musical now? From high society, high society and high fidelity to, the Band's Visit on one level, which is wonderful, but also based on a movie, to Saturday Night Fever. If there's a movie that had any kind of either cult status, Hairspray, to big popular success, some people are going to get together, some movie studios are going to put money in it to try and make it a Broadway musical and make it go. So I thought, Pretty Women, well, what do you know? The show has been making already $1 million a week. Isn't previews. That's quite amazing. The reviews have not come out. It's going to open on Thursday, and the reviews will come out on Friday. And even before the reviews, it may end up being review-proof. People are digging it. They're coming to see it. Whether they're loving it, I don't know, but obviously word of mouth has to be pretty good for Pretty Women. People want to see this story. And, of course, a huge chunk of the Broadway audience is women-driven and young women-driven. So maybe that's the reason. But, if you told me of all the shows that are going to be opening in this current Broadway season, and if I were somehow a millionaire and wanted to put $100,000 into a show, and it's like, no, please, nobody's going to want to go see that. I don't want to go see that. I'd be out I wouldn't be out $100,000. I'd be out the potential of making $1 million. Oh well, that's why I'm here in Greeley, Colorado. But you know what? I'm happy to be in Greeley, Colorado, doing what I do, doing this radio program, doing Inside Broadway every week here on Dave's Gone By, which, by the way, is brought to you in part by this marvelous journal, Performing Arts Insider, the Bible of Broadway. Since 1944, Performing Arts Insider has been the journal that people in the entertainment industry consult for every piece of news and information about every show on, off, and off Broadway. So let's flip through it, shall we? We shall. Here on page 2, you've got every show that's playing from the previous season, plus all the shows that are opening this season, stuff that'll be coming up next season, all in one quick guide. That's just page 2. Plus there's a table of contents over here. And then we get to this next page. Every Broadway theater listed, and whether it's a Schubert House or a Niederlander House, where it's located, what shows are playing in it, and for how long. So if you're a producer and you're wondering, hey, what theaters are open for a show I want to bring in, this is the page you turn to. If you are a theater critic or a theater journalist, or you're booking guests for various shows on TV or radio, you need this page, a guide to the press agents. These are the folks who handle every show on Broadway. So you don't go Googling, well, who's the stage manager? How do I contact? Go backstage? No. You call the press agent who is representing the show. Oh, I'm getting 2 hearts. I'll bet that's actually from let's see if it's from my wife. Oh, who's watching? Who gave me the hearts? Whoever it is, thank you so much. The loves. Oh, a fellow named Jeff. Well, thank you, Jeff. But yeah, the press agents who are handling the program, handling the shows. Then we move on to the heart of the magazine. Day by day, Broadway. When shows are starting, previews, opening, and closing. Day by day, a calendar. A calendar of awards and special events involving New York theater. We turn not only for Broadway, every show off and off Broadway too. Fantastic stuff. Are we done? No, my friends, we are not. No, my Daver hoodlums, we are not. Because we get to the real, that was the heart of the magazine, now the meat of it. Every single show, on, off, and off Broadway, tremendous amounts of information, all the producers listed and their contact info. The designers, the writers, the directors, the choreographers, the actors. Sometimes you can contact them directly or their managers or agents. When shows are opening and closing, their synopses, notes and special information about each show. We do this for hundreds of shows, and we do it 21 times per year, which you can subscribe to, or you can subscribe to just the monthly edition. It is expensive. Performing Arts Insider does cost a penny or two, but the people who subscribe renew year after year, because they know there's no other place that gives you all this information. We have one direct competitor, and they're very good when it comes to Broadway, but they don't touch us when it comes to off and off Broadway. Only Performing Arts Insider has that kind of information. So, How do you find out about it? Go to performingartsinsider.com. performingartsinsider.com for information on how to subscribe. If you happen to be in Manhattan, you can pick up a single issue at either the Drama Bookshop or the Theater Circle store, both in Midtown in the West 40s. So, and remember, each issue has on the back of it, look at that handsome fellow, but information on how to subscribe. But it's also at the website, performingartsinsider.com. It is the Bible of Broadway. And let me just put in a quick pitch for the publishers of PAI, and those are Total Theater. You can find out more about them by going to their absolutely free website, totaltheater.com. There, you will find thousands of theater reviews, not only in New York, but all over the country, all around the world. And they're grouped and they're listed, and there's a button you can click where you can go to hyperlinks of reviews of shows that are currently running. Plus, there's a whole archive of shows that have run the last 10 or 20, or even in some cases 25 or 30 years. You've got to check it out, totaltheater.com. And we are totally about the theater in this segment of Dave's Gone By. It's called Inside Broadway, where we're giving you some Broadway news and information for the week. You know, I realize we are in the dog days of summer in the middle of August here, and yet we are having 2 Broadway shows open this week. Well, as I mentioned, we'll have Pretty Woman opening this week, and then opening tomorrow, August 13th, or is that Monday night? Wait, what's today? Oh, I think it might be opening Monday, excuse me. But there's a new musical comedy with a book by Ken Davenport and Sarah Salzberg and someone named Grundelschatz. Okay, I'll watch any musical by someone named Grundelschatz. Ken Davenport is this maverick Broadway producer who is always trying to think of new ways to fund shows, and he's got his name on a couple of hits, so he's doing pretty well. But the show is called Getting the Band Back Together, and it's at the Belasco Theater on Broadway, opening Monday night. And here's the deal. Here's the thing. It has to do with, I guess, these guys who were in a band back in their high school, late high school, college days. Now they're old, they're middle-aged, not old, middle-aged, a little paunchy, and they decide to get it back together. I've heard it's pretty funny. And the show's going to need some help from the critics. It's not selling all that well at this point. But there's a couple of funny songs in it. I've heard one of them, and it is funny. So let's see what the critics say about Getting the Band Back Together. It's opening this week at the Belasco Theater on Broadway. And now there's yet more Broadway news, because it is usual that you get a lot of news about Broadway this time of year. It's just kind of rare to have 2 Broadway shows open in August. But for a show that's gonna be opening in a couple of months, it is official that Tootsie is now coming to Broadway. Yes, see, they adapt the movies. And they adapt that very popular comedy that was written way back in the day by Murray Shiskel and Larry Gelbart. So you remember the one with Dustin Hoffman playing Michael Dorsey, this actor who just can't get a break. He stands in his own way sometimes because of his personality. But he's a good, talented actor. He's going up for commercials. He's not getting them. He's not getting any roles. One time he decides to dress up as a woman. This is years before Mrs. Doubtfire. And what do you know? He gets a job on a soap opera, and it turns his life around in ways he did not expect. It's a very fun film. I haven't seen it probably in 30 years, but I remember it being very good. Well, Scott Ellis will be directing it, and it will be opening on Broadway at the Marquis Theater on April 23rd. I think they were waiting for Escape to Margaritaville to close before they officially announced all that. But Santino Fontana, very talented and charming actor. You've seen him in My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and he was in Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella a couple of seasons back. He'll be playing the Michael Dorsey role, so he's a likable actor, so you'll probably be rooting for him from the first. The wonderful Michael McGrath is in there, or he may pronounce it Michael McGraw. Julie Holston, our friend of the Daverhood, she will be in Tootsie, as will Reg Rogers and Sarah Stiles, who has been playing Sandy in the current and closing in a couple of weeks SpongeBob SquarePants musical. So the show will try out September through October at the Cadillac Palace Theater in Chicago. So, assuming nobody gets shot when they're in Chicago, it will come to the Marquee Theater in April. Tootsie. So it's Tootsie hello. So that'll be kind of fun to look forward to. And now, I'm just going to close off this edition of Inside Broadway on Dave's Gone By. And by the way, welcome to Jeff and Glenn and David. Oh, and a different Jeff. Jeff! I haven't seen you all summer, and you're back. You're saying, A Midsummer Night's Dream, as it hath been sundry times publicly acted. Well, yeah, I don't know who's doing A Midsummer Night's Dream, but maybe Tootsie, well, that'll be in April, that'll be spring. Getting band back together, A Pretty Woman might be A Midsummer Night's Dream for theater goers, we'll see. But welcome back, Jeff. It's so good to see you. I hope you did a ton of work on your dissertation over the summer, and I look forward to being your co-office nearness mate in just a week over at UNC. And by the way, welcome back to Lisa, who just rejoined us. But two sad things to mention on Inside Broadway. Two losses this week. One of them, and there's more should have been made of this, but John Glines died on August 8th. John Glines, now, people in the theater will know who this man is, people in New York theater especially, and people who are involved in gay theater, because he was one of the most important nascent people in off Broadway back in the 60s as well, back really in the 70s and 80s. The Glines, they were the people doing gay plays. It wasn't on Broadway yet. You didn't see that. Torch Song, not yet. Angels in America, not yet. So if you were doing gay theater, which the New York Times wouldn't look at, which nobody would review, and yet there was obviously an audience waiting for it and ready to see it, and John Glines was the guy who started making it happen. He was a drama graduate at Yale, and then he actually worked in children's television. He was on he was behind the scenes on Captain Kangaroo and Sesame Street. He was writing for them. Then he started writing off-Broadway plays, but he created a production company and a place for gay plays to be done called The Glines. Shows there, and I never saw them because I wasn't going to the theater that much. It was a little too early for me, but I remember these shows playing. Shows like On Tina Tuna Walk, Men of Manhattan, Chicken Delight, and then came the 1980s and that next level. So you start really cheap, low budget, just getting the shows up, and then 1983, a little show called Torch Song Trilogy that he was involved in producing. And in fact, John Glines became the first Tony Award acceptor in 1983 to thank his same-sex partner on a major award show, to have that bravery to go and do that back then. And John Glines was nominated 2 years later for As Is, which is the lesser-known AIDS-related show other than The Normal Heart. And he also won a drama desk for a very different kind of gay show called Howard Crabtree's Whoop-De-Doo. I remember that show, so much fun. And our friend Jay Rogers was in that original off-Broadway show. John Glines was, of course, also very socially active, a founding trustee of Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. So, of course, we bid a very fond and respectful farewell to the late John Glines, born in 1933 and passed away this past week. And also, now, if you're theater people, you know John Glines. Everybody knew and remembered and loved Charlotte Ray. Born Charlotte Ray Labotsky back in 1926, and she died last Sunday, August 5th. She had various different illnesses that she was dealing with. She had put a pacemaker in a few years back. When she was in her 80s, she battled pancreatic cancer. I remember her doing interviews about that, and she beat it. But then bone cancer came back, and finally she passed away last weekend. Now, non-theater people We know Charlotte Rae, of course, from Different Strokes, which spun off into The Facts of Life. She was Emmy nominated for that. In fact, I've got to play... I forgot to do this, but I've got to play this soundbite. Hold on. You know I've got to play this. Here it is. Peter Griffin as Charlotte Rae.
Girls, girls, girls.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to do that one more time.
Girls, girls, girls.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter. But yes, Charlotte Rae in The Facts of Life in Different Strokes, and what else? She was born in Milwaukee to Russian Jewish immigrants. As a matter of fact, her family, I think, was close friends with Golda Meir. If you didn't know, Meir was born in Milwaukee. She started doing summer stock at the age of 16, went to Northwestern University, but didn't graduate. She decided to just go to New York, take her chances, which brought her to Broadway back in 1952 in a show called Three Wishes for Jamie. And then, probably one of the roles that really put her on the map, she was in that original off-Broadway three-penny opera. I mean, it was already, I think, a revival by the time they did it at Theatre de Lys, but that was the one that made three-penny opera kind of a standard in the repertory. She was in that, of course. It ran, and one of the interesting things about that show is it was treated, basically the only time this has happened, except for a special Tony won by the Fantastics, but it was the only time that an off-Broadway show had Tony Award nominations and wins, was that three-penny opera back in 1954 to 56. Anyway, she also, Charlotte Rae, had roles in Lil Abner in the 1965 Broadway musical Pickwick. She was in the Israel Horovitz play Morning, Noon, and Night. She was in the David Rabe drama In the Boom Boom Room in 1973, which led to a Tony nomination for her for Best Actress. And then, of course, she did so much television. She was in Car 54, Where Are You? She did Queen of the Stardust Ballroom. She had a featured role, and a funny one, too, in the Adam Sandler movie, You Don't Mess with a Zohan, 10 years ago. So very funny lady. And, of course, she is and was a friend of the Daverhood. She was interviewed by our own Rabbi Sol Solomon not that long ago, back in November of 2015. If you go to davesgoneby.com, you can easily find that episode or just the interview if you want to hear it. And as a matter of fact, when she was on the show, she was plugging her autobiography, The Facts of My Life, which she co-wrote with her son, Larry Strauss, son of her ex-husband, John Strauss, who divorced her, and she was talking all about this, when he admitted that he was bisexual. That's what happened back in the day. Actors married actors, and they didn't know everything about their hobbies. But she was wonderful. She was wonderful on screen. She was wonderful talking to us in the Daverhood. So we certainly miss Charlotte Rae. And in honor of her, let's play a little bit, as much as Facebook will allow, of a song that our friend of the Daverhood, Sheldon Harnick, wrote. It's called The Shape of Things. Here's Charlotte Rae.
Completely round is the perfect pearl the oyster manufactures. Completely round is the steering wheel that leads to compound fractures.
Sorry to pot that down, but again, I'm trying to have Facebook not stop our video and stop our stream because they hear copyrighted music. And of course, that particular... Usually you can get through a chorus and a verse of a song in about 30 seconds, which is the cutoff time. But in that one, of course, it takes a whole minute. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed a little bit of our friend Charlotte Rae, the late Charlotte Rae. Now we have a new friend of the Daverhood joining us with the one, the only, the Jewish Rabbi Sol Solomon. We're very excited about this. It is the artistic director of the American Shakespeare, is it Conservatory? Center, sorry, the American Shakespeare Center in Stanton, Virginia. Oh, you're going to love this. It's Rabbi Sol talking with Ethan McSweeny on Dave's Gone By.
I'm Ethan McSweeny, the new artistic director of the American Shakespeare Center, Shakespeare's American home in Stanton, Virginia, and I'm talking with Rabbi Sol Solomon on Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio.
Oh, shalom, damn it! This is your old pal Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And I am so delighted to get all Bardian and Shakespearean with you today because, as you know, I love the theater and I love talking about even Shakespeare, which can be something of a slog, I have to admit, but not today, because we're going to be talking with someone who is taking over the American Shakespeare Center of Stanton, Virginia. His name is Ethan McSweeny. You know that name because he has directed on Broadway. He directed the 2000 revival of The Best Man with people like Spalding Gray and Chris Noth and Charles Durning. He also did that adaptation of the John Grisham book A Time to Kill with people like Patrick Page and friend of the Daverhood Tanya Pinkins and Tom Skerritt. And, oh my God, he's directed so many places. He's at the Dublin Gate Theater, the Guthrie in Minneapolis, the Old Globe in San Diego, the Stratford Festival. We are talking with Ethan McSweeny and are delighted that he's taking the time with us today. Shalom, Ethan.
Shalom, Rabbi.
How you doing? How's it going?
Very well, thanks.
Now, how long have you been in this new job as artistic director of the American Shakespeare Center?
6 whole days.
Oh my God. Mit Mazel McGlick. So are you settling in? Are you learning the phone system?
I'm learning the phone system. I've almost got my email account going. Yesterday I printed my first document. So yeah, it's a little bit like trying to jump on board a moving train right now, but it's a really exciting process.
Now this train was run for the last 30 years by the same guy, the guy who basically founded or co-founded the place. So how did you find out about this job, this opening, and you know, what do you think that you bring to the table? So that's the reason they chose you.
So American Shakespeare Center started out as the Shenandoah Shakespeare Express, and it was the brainchild of a guy named Jim Warren and his English professor, Ralph Cohen. And Jim was a student at James Madison University here in the Shenandoah Valley, and they had been going to see plays, Shakespeare plays in England, and they thought that they could do a better job. Mostly they thought that the plays were being done with too much decoration and scenery and all sorts of things, and that the story and the authentic Shakespeare was getting lost. And so they set about to produce in what is kind of called original practices, which means we go back and we look at how we think it might have been done in the Elizabethan era. And they had a lot of success, and I toured Virginia, they toured Maryland, they toured all the way to Maine and all the way to Texas. They got to 3 other continents, and they were doing their thing, and then the citizens of Stanton, Virginia, decided that they wanted to build a theater to help revitalize their really beautiful downtown neighborhood, which is one of the top 15 small towns in America, according to, I think, Fodor's travel guides last week. So they built, and they approached Shenandoah Shakespeare Express, and they said, well, what do you want to build if you would build a theater? And Shenandoah Shakespeare Express said, well, we're not sure we want to build a theater because our whole methodology is built on the fact that we tour, and because we tour, we don't do scenery and we don't do lighting cues, and every sound cue and music cue we make ourselves. But if we were going to build a theater, we would like to build it just like Shakespeare's indoor theater, the Blackfriars, which was a recovered monastery space that some of Shakespeare and his colleagues got in the early 1700s in London. And wouldn't you know it, they raised the money and they built here a stunning, beautiful, all oak wood recreation of Shakespeare's indoor theater, the Blackfriars Playhouse. It's the only one in the world, and it is as authentic as we could make it in the 21st century. And we perform the plays here in repertory. We do plays of Shakespeare's. We do plays written by some of his contemporaries. We just started a new program called Shakespeare's New Contemporaries, in which we're commissioning new writers to write companion plays that would go with a Shakespeare play and be performed under our signature performance conditions, which are leaving all the lights on and not doing anything that can't be made by hand. So it's a very handmade art form, authentic to Shakespeare. And I'll tell you, Rabbi, I had been traveling all around the world directing Shakespeare, and every once in a while I'd hear about American Shakespeare Center, and I'd say, I got to get down there. I got to get down there. Finally, last fall, I got a call from the search firm that was looking for the replacement for this original founder, Jim, and they said, do you have any suggestions of people, and I gave him some good names of people I thought would be really good at this job. And then I said, but I've never been there. Would it be possible for me to just pay a visit over the holidays? And I might be in the area because I got some family down here. Could I just come? I'll just come in. I don't need to see a play. I just want to see the theater. And I came in, and I walked into the theater, and I was surrounded by this wood and this scale that is both intimate and epic. And theaters are really magic, sacred spaces, and they have in them a kind of smell sometimes of what has happened in them. And this theater, it had a real good smell. And I walked out of there. My wife was with me. We got in the car, and she said, "Don't you think you should apply for this job?"
Well, how do you do? I mean, did you feel a little bit when they first called you like, how come they're asking me for recommendations? How come they didn't think of me just as the guy?
Well, I think they thought, he's more, he's got this big freelance career. He's been on Broadway. He doesn't want to come to lovely Stanton, Virginia, and run a theater. And little did they know that really one of my big ambitions was to come and run a classically oriented theater. And I wasn't offended. I thought, they didn't think of me. And then I called the guy up and I said, is it too late? I mean, I gave you all these good names. Maybe you've already found what you're looking for. And he said, no, it's not too late. And I put my name in, and then they put me through an incredibly rigorous search process. I mean, it's not like everyone said, welcome Ethan McSweeny. I mean, I had to go through a series of interviews that if we would put our political candidates through this kind of interview, we'd have a whole different
Give up? Well,
politics.
What did they... Because you can stand on your resume, on your body of work. What did they expect you or to hear from you during the interview process?
They wanted to hear a little bit about what I thought of them, I think, and what I was going to do here, and what kind of artistic director I was going to be. And being an artistic director is not the same thing as being a director. There's a lot of overlap, but there's, one of them means thinking about an organization, and one of them means thinking about the play that you're doing at that time. And I think when you think about an organization, it's got a lot more commitments. It's got commitments to more people, the staff that works here. It's also a civic act. It's got a commitment to this town. And I've been saying to people, if you want to be a destination theater, and that's what American Shakespeare Center is. It's a place where a lot of people want to come here, spend the weekend, see 4 or 5 plays, go have some fantastic meals, stay in beautiful boutique hotels, and just be in the Shenandoah Valley. But if you want to be that, you got to be a great town to visit too. And Stanton is a great town, and it's a growing town, and one it's got a real good feel to it right now. It's young, it's hip. There's a couple of universities nearby. It's a real great spot.
Now, for people who are thinking of visiting, first of all, if you're going to Google it, Stanton has a U in there somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why they don't call it Staunton? Have you ever explored that? You're calling it Stanton. Everybody says Stanton, but it's spelled Staunton. What's wrong with people over there?
Staunton. Yeah, that's a real. You put it right. You hit the nail on the head there, because we got a branding problem. But we're in Virginia, you see, and I'm from Washington D.C. and I spent most of my life living in New York City. So this is my first time really living below the Mason-Dixon line. Ooh. But in Virginia, Staunton is pronounced Stan.
Huh. Well, I guess that's my fault.
Your fault.
Yeah, or Gewalt, I should say. No, I'm kidding. We're talking with Ethan McSweeny, the artistic director. Now, also for people, since we have a lot of people who listen in New Jersey and New York, and especially Borough Park, I'm wondering, where are you in relation to Washington, D.C.? Where is Shenandoah Valley? What does it take for someone who's living in or near Manhattan or Long Island to get there?
Yeah, can I shout out to Borough Park? Because I live in Bay Ridge in my New York life. So.
You know my homies, or my shlomies, I should say, yes.
So the Stanton, Virginia is about 2 hours drive from Washington, D.C., right down into the heart of the Shenandoah Valley, which is some of the most beautiful valleys and oldest mountains in our country's history. I mean, this goes all the way back. There are buildings in this town, Rabbi, that go back to like 1703. Ooh. That's how old this area is. And you get here by car. You can fly into the Shenandoah Valley Airport. You can fly into Richmond or Charlottesville, both of which are nearby. And I haven't done it yet, but there's a train.
Oh, Mazel.
Train that goes from Union Station, Washington. It goes 4 times a week out and 4 times a week back, and it goes from D.C., I think, to St. Louis, and it stops in Stanton. So there's a lot of different ways to get here. Once you get here, you're going to want to come and stay for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, it's not a day trip from New York, but it's a...
Yeah, no, you'd want to come and, this place thinks of itself, people do this, they go up to, you mentioned in my intro, Stratford, Ontario in Canada, where there's a famous Shakespeare festival that got its start exactly like this one did. The town elders said, we want to support an industry in our town that's renewable. We were an agricultural town and that's sort of dying out. So we're gonna start a theater. And 50 years ago, and now it's the biggest theater in North America. Same thing happened in Ashland, Oregon. You may have heard of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. Super famous.
Yes.
Shakespeare festival in this country, more popular in the West probably than the East, although I remember as a kid, my parents, I don't know, we were maybe going to California to see Yosemite, and so we made a trip to see Shakespeare in Ashland.
Oh, now here it starts. So your parents obviously encouraged your love of the theater. Did they realize that you were going to be an artistic soul and not going to be a doctor or a lawyer kind of thing?
I don't, that's a good question. They took me to a lot of theater, and I don't know if they had an intention for me to go into it or not. I thought I wasn't going to be in theater. I was going to go to college and do something else. I thought I was going to be a journalist or a foreign service officer or something like that, and I just kept at it, and theater kept finding me. And I think when you are born with a creative soul, the art keeps finding you.
Well, here's the deal. By the time you got to college, you already knew. You were already pursuing this. And this surprises me. This sort of shocks me. You went, not that you went to, what was it, Columbia University?
Go Lions, yeah.
Well, it's not that you went there, but that you got the first bachelor's degree in theater. How's that?
Yeah.
Didn't they have that for 100 years?
No, not Columbia. Columbia, Rabbi, was all about only the great books and serious learning, and they didn't have time for something as frivolous and as theater. That was not the arts were not something that a serious Columbia student could study until I got there, and they were just starting to open up arts as major tracks, and I got on a committee to help them formulate the theater major, and then when I went to declare, they said, well, you would be the first one. Would you mind going to the bursar's office and finding out what the paperwork is?
Because I figure, there wouldn't be afraid to be like 12 or 20 firsts, and you'd be letter M, so you might be the 6th, but no, it was just you. It was
just me. And, we started a theater major there that I didn't know at the time, but I got involved in making it. But we said, let's make a theater major that fits into Columbia's values. So it will be heavy on literature and reading and cultural studies and art history and music history. And what I was creating was really a directing major, and I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know what a director was, and I didn't know I wanted to be a director. But what I made was something where I didn't have to take quite as many acting classes, the way a lot of theater departments are much heavier on performance, and this was heavier on academic and study.
Now, this reminds me, one of our guests over the years on Dave's Gone By is a professor, a Shakespearean scholar named James Shapiro. Did you have him?
Oh my God! Yes, yeah, I did. Taught a class with another legendary professor. Now Jim is a legendary professor in his own right. But at the time when I was there, he was like the young upstart, changing the world of Shakespeare scholarship. And he taught there was a year-long Shakespeare class, and you could take the first semester with this guy Ted Taylor, and the second semester with Jim Shapiro. Brilliant teacher, and his books on Shakespeare have been super inspirational.
Oh yeah, and he also did a documentary about Shakespeare, his political parts of his plays and how they were affected by whether the Queen was in power or someone else was in power. If you ever see that, it's quite wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great piece. I like his stuff too about will and this sort of the year by year and sort of and he really lets you do a sort of deep dive into everything that's happening in this society. And you realize, of course, no writer writes from without their social fabric, right? So Shakespeare was a writer. He was just a guy, you know. He was a guy trying to make a living writing plays, is really what he was. And that was as hard back then as it is now.
Yeah.
So.
Tell me about it. But let me ask also, I mean, we talk Shakespeare, and you are, of course, now an artistic director of a Shakespeare Center, but you've directed all kinds of things. I mean, you directed stuff off Broadway like 100 Saints You Should Know, and the first time I heard your name was about a decade ago when you did an off-Broadway show that kind of took off as a sleeper hit called Never the Sinner. Did that kind of change your status a little bit? Did that give you more notability?
Yeah, that was really almost 2 decades ago, but we're not counting. But it was a real big launch, actually, and that was written by a guy who nobody knew at the time. His name was John Logan, and he went on to write the screenplays for little films like Gladiator, a couple of the big James Bond 007 movies, a bunch of really, really great stuff. So. But Never the Sinner gave me a big start. It was a big splash. It got its start in New York at the American Jewish Rep over in Chelsea. A guy named Stanley Breckner was the artistic director, and he'd heard about my production of the play in Washington, and he gave us the spot in New York. And my friends and I had literally put the set in the back of a rental van. It was like the Beverly Hillbillies. We drove ourselves up to New York City, put our little set into his theater over there in the basement in Chelsea, and a couple of people couldn't come with us, so we recast a couple of people. I got another couple of friends to come and do the lights and stuff like that, and we opened, and we weren't gonna. I didn't think anything more was gonna happen. You know, I thought, oh, that's great. I mean, how lucky we got a show from D.C. to New York. That doesn't happen every day. Aren't we happy to be here and excited? And in fact, there was this guy who was on the board of the American Jewish Rep, and he said, he's a publicist in New York. His name is Jeffrey Richards. He said, I have advance word. I'm sorry to tell you, the New York Times review is not going to be good. And I went out to dinner with my parents, and I said, well, this was really fun. Enjoy it while it lasts. This theater's a wild ride. I'll be home soon. And I think Jeffrey was playing with me. I'm not sure exactly why, but because the New York Times wasn't not good. It was a rave, and we got a huge picture, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. And Jeffrey wanted to stop being a publicist and start being a producer, and he took an option on the play. And before we knew it, we were in an open-ended commercial run at the John Houseman Theater on 42nd Street, back when there were a bunch of theaters on 42nd Street in New York and not a bunch of apartment towers.
Well, wait, no, you still have the Theater Row there. You're still on 9th Avenue.
Yeah, and thank God they preserved Theater Row, and you've got the signature. Actually, where the John Houseman was is where the Pershing Center, the Signature Theater Center is. So there's still, you're right, there's still a theater and a good one there, and we should be very grateful for that.
Yeah, and as you said, Jeff Richards has gone on to produce a dozen plays on Broadway. Did he produce The Best Man?
He did.
Yeah,
that was his idea. Yeah, he sent me the script for that and said, "Do you think this is worth reviving?" And I read it and I said, "Absolutely, hell yeah, it's worth reviving. Let's do it." And and he said, "Good, because I have tickets for us to go to Italy to meet with Gore Vidal next week."
He's just full of surprises, that Jeff.
Oh my God, this guy! I mean, we had such a good time together, and so we got on a plane. We flew to Rome, and we went to Gore Vidal lived in Ravello, Italy, on the Amalfi Coast, in this extraordinary villa. And we went to go meet him. And you know, I had grown up in Washington D.C. and I'd gone to kind of a snooty boys' school called St. Albans, and so had Gore Vidal. And it's such a snooty, old school kind of school that we actually had faculty members in common, even though we were separated by about 40 years from our graduation dates.
Wow.
So Gore and I hit it off immediately. I loved him. I loved his mind. It was such an incredible place to visit. And that made the whole production sort of just come together. And
well, even if the production had fallen through, you got to go to Italy and hang with Gore Vidal in his villa. Like, how many people get that experience? My God. What other experiences, what other, like, unforgettable parts of your life have happened owing to your being a director who goes across the country and around the world directing?
I mean, the thing is, what's the fun part about being a freelance director? And now I have a home, which is great. But the fun part is you never know what's going to happen, and then the less fun part is that you never know what's going to happen. And so, I always say I've got two jobs. One is doing the job. The other job I have is getting the job. And quite often, getting the job takes a lot more time and a lot more effort and a lot more brain space than doing the job. But for me, the best part has been you get to meet different people. And there are times like when you're sitting in Gore Vidal's villa in Italy, and he's telling you about the furniture in his dining room is from Pontius Pilate's breakfast nook in. What was the Charlton Heston film he wrote, with the cherry?
Oh, I thought you meant the actual Pontius Pilate.
Ben-Hur, yeah, no, it was not actual Pontius Pilate, but from the movie of Ben-Hur, it was the furniture that had been in Pontius Pilate's little breakfast room, and that was in Gore's dining room. But you're sitting there, and that's when you think, well, if I become a lawyer or a doctor, this probably would not have happened.
Although, if you become a lawyer or doctor, you can probably afford Pontius Pilate's... Maybe.
Oh, there's that, and you know what? That's something we don't. If you choose, or the arts chooses you have to be prepared to sacrifice, because we don't get compensated the way other professions do, and sometimes that's tough to learn. I'm trying to buy a car now that I live in Virginia, and I've got good credit, but try going into a car dealership, and when they ask you the financing questions, they say, so you have a job? Yeah. How long have you had this job? 2 days.
You gotta wait 3 months before you get that car. Definitely. But here's you talk about the itinerant stuff, and then now you're planting roots. You are married to a gorgeous and adorable actress named Nancy Anderson, whom I remember from one of my favorite musicals of the past 20, 30 years, A Class Act on Broadway, and she's done some...
Oh, she was the bomb in The Class Act.
Oh, I'm telling you, what a hottie. And I love that show. It's a wonderful show. But she is a New York and elsewhere actress. Now, was there a conversation you had to have with her of saying, we're moving steady here. Boom, we're living in Stanton, Virginia. Does she get to know?
She's almost even more excited about it than I am. So she told me she's always had a fantasy about living in a more rural part of the world, and this is going to be our big chance to try that out and live down here for a while. And the thing is, rabbis, we're on the road all the time, right? Yeah. So she and I, right now she's up in Auburn, New York, doing a world premiere of a new musical version of the book Anne of Green Gables. I'm down here. I'm going to go see her show and pick her up in a couple of weeks and bring her down here for a visit. And then, we're going to keep our place in New York City, too, because we figure we're back and forth and back there. So we just try and keep it going. She did send me, I will say, her other big fantasy is she's always wanted a 1940s pickup truck, and I got sent 6 different Craigslist advertisements yesterday. I'm trying to buy, a sensible Subaru, and I think she wants me to go buy a beat-up pickup. So
I'm more of a Subaru man. I'm in Colorado with my friend Dave right now. Subarus are great, gotta tell you. They don't outlast hail damage very well, but otherwise they run and they're great and they go. But so does absence make the heart grow fonder when you're in the arts and you're both artistic people? She's an actress, you're a director, and you're away for several weeks at a time. Is that in some ways better for a marriage than other people who are like every day, boom, 9 to 5, come home, dinner on the table, watch TV, go to sleep?
Maybe it is. I've never gotten. Sometimes we always think the grass is greener on the other side, and wouldn't it be nice if we could see each other all the time? And we just had a time where we were together for 4 months, and it was great. We loved it, but by the end of it, we were like, great, have a great, good luck on that show. Great, good luck to you too. Good luck down there in Stanton. Okay, I'll talk to you. Listen, we talk every night, and absence can make the heart grow fonder until about 4 weeks in, when then it just makes the heart grow cold.
Okay.
And you know what I think, and I've talked to I actually talked to I talk to actors about this a lot, and one of the really awesome things about some of the wonderful company down here at the American Shakespeare Center is we got a bunch of couples down here. We got people who are together, who are acting together. Sometimes they're combinations of actors and a costume designer, or an actor and a props person, or a musician, and it's really important to me to offer ways to support people who are together and to support them as artists together, because I know from this life how difficult that can, what a strain it can put on you. But what I say is we try never to go more than 3 weeks. Like, that is almost the maximum, and at the end of 3 weeks, someone's got to go find the other one, no matter who has to go where, and that's just sort of that's the rule, and that's how we've worked out our lives. So.
Now, speaking of the structure of time, I'm always curious about this as being the artistic director of a big organization, of this theater company. How much of your day, or perhaps a given week, is spent with A, creative stuff, B, organizational stuff, and C, raising money and talking to great white whales and asking them to put you in their wills?
Right.
You know?
Right. So as you might suspect, I'd say proportionately C is the highest activity, certainly at the moment. But no, the reality is this. I mean, for instance, we at American Shakespeare Center, we perform 50 weeks out of 52. This is not a summer theater or something like that. This place is in business all the time. So we're always working on what comes next. I have a little window right now because I just joined up that the first show I'm going to direct won't be until next spring. So that's actually, that's
almost a year. Yeah.
That's more time than I've had off from actual directing in a long, long time, which is good because it gives me a chance to sort of settle into the organizational part and get enough practice at it that when I do go into directing, because directing is, that's an 8-hour-a-day activity. So that means that anything else I'm doing as artistic director has to be done around the outside of that. But right. I'd say we're a not-for-profit regional theater company producing the classics. If we do well at the box office, but there's no way that what we could make at the box office, unless we were going to start charging the kind of ticket prices that would mean that our audience wouldn't be able to afford to get here, and right now it's an incredibly affordable ticket and we want to keep it that way. If we had to start charging that, then we'd lose audience. So we have to go out and raise money from the community, from foundations, from the state, and what we've got, I think, is one of the other thing, and I should talk about this a little bit, because we don't just produce here in Staunton Stanton. We have a fantastic touring company.
You're still keeping the touring going.
Yeah. I told you the history of, the DNA of this place is this concept of touring. And this is one of the really great Shakespeare tours that is done in this country. And they get out there in a couple of buses and trucks. It's a cast of 12. They're bringing this year 3 plays in repertory. Shakespeare's A Winter's Tale, Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors, and Antigone, and they perform from Maine to Texas from between September and April. And you have just as much chance of seeing an American Shakespeare Center production out on the road as you do if you come here. So that's they're a big like billboard as well as an opportunity to reach into a bunch of communities that wouldn't get a live Shakespeare performance in their community otherwise. And
so the touring shows are not
schools, but they go everywhere.
But the touring show, it's not as if you do a show on the main stage and then if it goes really well, you send it out to tour. The touring shows are almost separate.
Yeah, they are separately programmed. So this is a separate company of actors that coexisting with our main stage activity, and then when they finish their tour in the springtime, after they're sort of tied to the academic year, so that they tend to go out between Labor Day and Thanksgiving, and then after New Year's until exams start, I guess. So around about late April, early May, they come back and we put them on our stage for 6 weeks.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so yeah.
And that's sort of after they've been out all over the country, they come home and we welcome them home and we produce them as our main offering. And there's an audience that comes here and they love that work because it's been informed by what they've learned out there in America.
We've been talking with Ethan McSweeny, the new artistic director of the American Shakespeare. Hold it, I've got to get this correct here. American Shakespeare Center of Stanton, Virginia. Everybody, you're going to want to check that out. You're going to want to spend a weekend there. And also, if you want to find out more about Mr. McSweeny and all the stuff that he has done prior to taking this job on, you can go to ethanmcsweeny.com. And here, this always pisses me off too. You put the U in Staunton and you don't pronounce it, and you've got the last name McSweeny and it doesn't have a third E in it. How did that happen? Where's the E before? Yeah.
This is the bane of my existence. Okay, so here's how. My family, it's McSweeny. For years, everyone spells it N-E-Y except my family. My father says, well, that's because we're from the original line of McSweeney's from Ireland. And I think, yeah. I'm about as Irish as you are. I've been fourth generation American. I don't really have a strong sense of that. And okay, sure, Dad, sure. And I'm sure that's what Granddad said to you. And we all believe that we're from the original line. It's just however some guy spelled it at Ellis Island when we came in, right? So I'm working in Ireland finally. And first off, I get back over there and I start directing plays, and I discover, guess what? I am Irish after all. It was really kind of fascinating to be surrounded by people who kind of look like me and thought like me, and I was like, I didn't really realize that I came from someplace. And a good friend of mine over there is a genealogist and historian and an actor, and he says to me, well, I'm not going to do his brogue, but he says, you know why you only have two E's? And I said, no, Denny, why do I only have two E's? He said, well, it's because you're from the original line in Donegal, and I know that because you only have the two E's and not the three.
Wow, so look at you.
There, my grandfather and my father were right.
Huh. It's no wonder you're not a raving alcoholic, come to think of it, if you're that Irish. I'm kidding, I kid.
Yeah, no, that's the American side of me has taken care of that.
Now, this authentic part of the way of Shakespeare that you do, I didn't get to ask before, but I assume you have seen what Mark Rylance was doing a couple of years ago when they were doing the 12th Night, and I think we did Richard III, where it's, again, authentic, candle lighting on the stage and authentic instruments. And A, what did you think of all that if you saw it? And B, where are you guys in relation to what that was?
That's a great question and a great example, because that work that Mark was doing comes from the Globe Theatre in London, which is also in the same vernacular of trying to practice and explore Shakespeare through the performance conditions that we think were prevailing at his time. So we're in the same family tree, and in fact, one of our founders, Dr. Ralph Cohen, who is an absolute Shakespeare genius and really the emotional, intellectual center of this place, he was a big participant in making the Globe in London happen, and he's on the Architectural Review board there, which is the group that kind of makes the serious decisions about what fits into their performance style. So Rylance and Mark's wife, Claire Van Kampen, as well, are both very big inspirations for us. I don't think of it as rules of what you can't do. I think of it as a contemporary artist being told, here, you don't have any more tools to tell this story than Shakespeare did. Now what will you do? So it's more of a challenge to go play in Shakespeare's sandbox and bring who you are and see how it goes. So here's some of the things that are like that. We do what's called universal lighting. So we have electrified candles in our performance space at Blackfriars, and they stay on the whole show. show. So if you're used to sitting in the dark, that doesn't happen. And, that changes the relationship of the actor to the audience in a way that is really phenomenal. And if you've never experienced it, you're going to love it, because what happens is you can't hide now. You're not just sitting there, watching somebody who's better lit do their thing. You're a participant. And when in Shakespeare, we know among the favorite devices is the soliloquy, where one actor stands and talks to the audience. Well, this is really hard to do for an actor when the audience is just this amorphous blob that they can't see. But it's a totally different relationship when we can see you and you can see us. And so that's a big part of what we do. We also follow the staging, where the stage is a thrust stage, which means the audience sits on three sides. And in fact, at the Blackfriars, our best seats in the house are on the stage itself. And those would have been where the nobles sat, partly because they were the best seats, but also because they came to the theater to be seen at the theater. And so they wanted everyone to know that they were there and what they thought about the play. So those seats we call the gallant stools, and they are on stage. And you can buy them, and when you come, and I really encourage everyone to try them out. But if we haven't sold them all, we give people an upgrade on the spot. So we'll call out in the pre-show and say, if anyone wants to upgrade, we have 2 empty seats over here. So we can, it's like an airplane. You can get one.
I love that.
At times.
Will you have groundlings, like throwing apple cores and things from the balcony?
Yeah, we don't hand out apple cores and tomatoes. So that's a place where we're not quite as potentially authentic, and we don't require you to sit there silently, God knows, but we may not experience quite as much back and forth conversation as we think could have happened in the Elizabethan era.
Well, maybe in the indoor theaters it wasn't as crazy as it was in the Globe. I mean, maybe in the indoor it was more a sense of decorum, since you had nobles, and it wasn't like this all-day, let's go to market and see a show thing that literally stretched all day with a 5-hour play and all this time in between, and commerce going on. Maybe, I don't know.
I think that's entirely correct, and it's mostly because, it was nobles, and also the ticket price was higher, so, it kind of kept some of the riffraff out.
And yet, even back in 1603, they did Grease. I don't know how they... No, I'm kidding. A little joke there.
We've done a few. We actually did... one of our most successful shows is before my time, but we did the musical Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, which had been done on Broadway, and we did that here unplugged. So all the music was played, live by the actors, and nobody was mic'd, which I think is a great way to do a musical. But the reason they did it was because it was a history piece, and just like Shakespeare was writing histories, that was a contemporary history, and it was a big success.
Huh. Now, let me ask you, you must have your first season planned out. I know you're going to be directing. What are you directing in the spring?
I don't. That is what I'm doing right now. I'm working on planning what will be my first season. So there is a great season underway right now. We are in the thick of our rep, and we are running with productions of Richard III, Jane Austen's Emma, in a really wonderful adaptation. As You Like It, one of Shakespeare's most beloved comedies, and a wonderful Elizabethan Jacobean play called Man of Moab that's very rarely produced. So you can come here now and see those productions. And in the winter, we move to a very different kind of season called the Actors Renaissance season. And the idea in the Actors Renaissance is we take 12 actors. They're almost always people who have been here before, so they know what they're doing. And they do 5 plays in rep, 1 week of rehearsal for each one, and get this, no directors. So this is really like what it used to be, because they didn't have directors in Shakespeare's time, and the actors weren't given the full script of the play. They were just given their side, right, just their lines. Didn't have Xeroxes either, right? So, one reason you do that is save on ink and some poor scribe somewhere to write it. The other reason you would do it, it was a way for the playwright to keep their intellectual property from getting pirated by anybody. Only the playwright had the complete text. There's a reason why Shakespeare's works were not published until the end of his career. His fellows didn't want them published in his theater company because they had the rights to produce them. And if they published them, well, any Tom, Dick, or Harry could have done King Lear, right? So that's one of the reasons why we've got so many what they're called corrupt or bad quartos of something like Hamlet, because it was such a popular play that a bunch of different people would go and try and recreate it from some bits that they could get.
But when these 12 actors that you have coming in the winter, well, they just get their own... Well, I mean, the plays they're doing are famous enough. They probably know the script of the other people or not. What are they actually doing?
But the point is that they focus on learning their part. They show up for rehearsal knowing their part fully and ready to go. I mean, which is sort of a little bit different than how we approach it. And then we don't give them a whole lot of time, so they kind of have to go with their first impulses. And the actors collaborate together to use, they go into our wardrobe and they create the costumes from what we've got, what exists. They use our prop shop and they go in and they find and pull the props that they need to do the shows. And this year they're going to do Henry IV Part 1, Merry Wives of Windsor, one other two. Oh, Belle's Stratagem and Arden of Faversham. And we're going to introduce our big new initiative, which I mentioned earlier, Shakespeare's New Contemporaries. And our first winner of our Shakespeare's New Contemporaries competition is a play by a woman named Amy Whiting that's related to Merry Wives of Windsor called Anne Page Hates Fun. That's going to be done in the winter too. So we've got. I mean, there is so much theater being made here. It's really just.
Well, you're 52 weeks a year, and you're a Shakespeare Center in Stanton, Virginia. There. Let me ask you before we let you go. What, first of all, and you don't have to name names or anything, but what's the worst experience you ever had directing not just Shakespeare but anything? What was like a hell show for you?
I agreed to do an off Broadway play while I was very busy doing The Best Man, and I didn't read the play really carefully, and I read it once, it looked good, I agreed to do it. I sent it to a designer friend, and the designer friend said, sure, let's do it. And because he and I were doing it, some other friends of ours said, sure, let's do it. And because we were all doing it, this incredible cast came together to do it. And then we all got there at the first day of rehearsal, and we read the play, and we all looked at each other and we went, well, this isn't very good. And, we were a little bit, it wasn't anybody's fault. It was a good, quick read. It just didn't quite add up when you went to really go do it. And gosh knows, we were sort of stuck because now we'd already, the producers had already committed to renting a space and producing a play. And I even went to them and I said, get out while you still can. Why don't we just fold up shop? And they're like, no, we really we need to produce this. And so we all went forward into it knowing full well that it was going to be a bloodbath. And boy, was it.
Oh, dear. Well, the producers are at fault, too. I mean, they probably read it more than you guys did. So they chose. Did they have an ulterior motive?
I know. I helped choose it. They'd actually sent me another play, and I'd read that one and said, I don't think this one. And they sent me this one, and I said, okay, maybe. And then they said, okay, maybe is good. And I said, maybe is maybe. And then they said, okay, we're in. We're doing it. And then, before I knew it, I was doing it, and I thought, okay. I was young. I wasn't very smart about knowing what I could and couldn't do and what I could and couldn't fix. And I got a lot smarter since then about knowing the limits of what my abilities are and how to work within those. And this was just one. It was just funny because literally everybody looked around after closing the page on the last, the script on the last page and the first reading, and we looked at each other and went, oh, whoops.
Well, that's interesting that you mention what you can and can't fix, because most of the scripts that you work with are not brand new and changeable by the author. So how do you fix, quote-unquote, something in a script that might be 20 years old or 400 years old?
Well, I mean, if it's a new work, then we're working with the author, and the author is the primary creative artist in the theater. And when I'm doing a world premiere, I always say it's not my world premiere; it's the writer's world premiere, and they are the final decider and arbiter of what goes and how. And I want them to have an absolutely, their experience is for what you would do. So like when I did A Recent Long Day's Journey into Night by Eugene O'Neill, the theater wanted me to cut it because O'Neill wasn't kidding. It was a long journey tonight. But I said, sure, I want to do it, but we got to make sure we run the edits that I make have got to be run by the estate to make sure they approve. If it's a 400-year-old play like a Shakespeare one, well, there's no copyright left, so it's all public domain, which means we have a lot of latitude as the interpreter to look at the text. And with a Shakespeare play, one of the great things about the work we do here at American Shakespeare Center is we do it super fast because, famously Shakespeare comes out and says in Romeo and Juliet the 2 hours traffic of our stage, but most productions of Romeo and Juliet are 3 hours long. So we believe that it was done at a really great clip without transitions, people talking continuously. It was a really vigorous exercise. But we still find that we have to cut the plays a little bit to get them into the 2 hour window. And frankly, you really want us to, because there's some of that stuff I try and cut very surgically so that you don't really see that anything is missing. But I can take out a line or a reference here that would simply confuse you, and if I take it out, it makes the meaning of everything around it clearer.
Well, I don't know if you could do a 2 hour Hamlet, though. Hamlet, you still have to cut to get it to 3 hours, quite honestly.
Yeah, that's true. Hamlet, I think there's exceptions granted for Hamlet. But I will say, when we did it here in the Actors' Ren, I think it was about 2:15, 2:20, and they weren't going fast. Like, you didn't go, oh my God, they're talking too fast. You were kind of breathless. It was like watching a sporting event, because it was just kept going, and the score kept changing, and you weren't sure who was going to win all the way to the end. So it really sustained this momentum that was really exciting.
Well, it has been exciting and momentous and a big win for us having Ethan McSweeny here in the Daverhood with us. Just want to tell everybody one more time, go to see a bunch of shows. Go spend the weekend in lovely Stanton, Virginia to see the American Shakespeare Center. Sign up, subscribe, or just come down for a weekend and see their shows. Find out more about Ethan McSweeny with only 2 E's in there at ethanmcsweeny.com, MCSWEENY, ethanmcsweeny.com. Last question for you before we let you go. Of all the Shakespeare shows that you've ever seen, what was the most indelible for you as an audience person?
One of the first ones I ever saw was A Midsummer Night's Dream. I was 5 years old. I was at the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. I was in the front row, and I laughed at something that probably a 5-year-old shouldn't have gotten. Probably I didn't get it. I just thought it was funny. And to Tanya, there was a little pool of water in front, and there were some little lilies or something floating on this water, maybe some little silk lilies or something. And Tanya bent down and blew them onto my face, and I was in heaven.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked that question. Oh, we are in heaven having talked to Ethan McSweeny in the Daverhood. Mr. McSweeny, I just wish you so much success and creativity and funding for this theater and for you in your career going ahead. It has been a delight, and we thank you, and shalom to you.
Shalom, Rabbi. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Rabbi Sol Solomon there, talking to Ethan McSweeny, the new artistic director of the American Shakespeare Center in Stanton, Virginia. Everybody, sure sounds like a fun season to go see, and the plans that he has for the theater. So we thank him so much for being with us in the Daverhood. Thank you, all of you, for joining us every week here on Dave's Gone By, because we're here every Saturday morning from 9 until noon or thereabouts, coming to you from the wilds of Greeley, Colorado, in a different place. We're making whoopee today. Actually, we're not. My wife might be listening, but no, I'm not making whoopee with anybody. I'm just making whoopee on radio and Facebook and podcast, as I do every week doing the Dave's Gone By program. Thanks so much to David and Lisa and Lawrence and Jeff and Frank and another David and Melba and all the folks who have been watching us all morning long. Are we done? No, we're not done. Of course we're not done. We have, oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, coming up very shortly, the finale of A Cow for Hansel. Yes, that is true. We've got A Cow for Hansel. We've been reading it for 4 bleeding months and having fun with it, no question. But this is the week that we get to the very last chapter, which, I swear to you, which really is called, here it is, The Beautiful Cow. You don't want to miss this. This is the finale of Cow for Hansel. We'll be doing that, and also, what do we have? We've got Rabbi Sol will be back with us shortly doing a rabbinical reflection. He'll be telling some jokes and giving their Judaic interpretations to them. And, Dave's Big Dictionary. That's where we take a word from this happy little book, which has 75,000 words in them, and I picked a word at random earlier in the show, and then it's going to be my job to talk for 5 or 10 minutes somehow about the word, about what it means to me, some anecdote. I'm still working on it because I came up with the periodic table of elements. That's what my finger landed on, the periodic table, ladies and gentlemen. There's actually the chart in this book. I'll show it to you later. But anyway, that's coming up. Also, Friends of the Daverhood coming up. So do not go away, even though it is almost 11:30 Mountain Time here for the Dave's Gone By show. It is our 662nd episode of the program. If you want to hear almost all of the other 661 of them, you can. Just go to the website, davesgoneby.com. Remember, it's Dave like my name. davesgoneby.com. There are archives going all the way back to our very first episode, October of 2002, late night on Long Island. Well, it wasn't that late. It was late evening on Long Island radio. We were an hour long back then we moved to an hour and a half, then we scaled back, then we were just online for a couple of months, and then moved to Colorado, was working or doing this show for about 7 years at UNC radio station's auspices. That is on hold now because of all the money troubles that our university has. Oh yeah. So we're still doing the show though. And we still have the stream going, but the stream is running our older episodes. But those are kind of at random. You can tune in to uncradio.org, I believe it is, and still hear old episodes of Dave's Gone By. As a matter of fact, 24/7, that's all you hear on the station. So I feel really sorry for somebody stuck in an elevator with that going. But if you want it not to be at random, you want to hear a particular episode, a particular guest, a skit that we've done, you want to go back and listen to A Cow for Hansel from the very beginning, it's all there at davesgoneby.com. We even have a separate archive of the interviews that we've done, separate archive for some of the songs and the skits. davesgoneby.com, you gotta check it out. And by the way, do check out our sponsors, Hewlett Minuteman Press, the copy kings of Broadway. Since the mid-1970s, the Torong family has owned and operated Hewlett Minuteman right in the heart of Hewlett, Long Island. And they do, well, they're a copy place, they're a franchise of Minuteman. But the Torong family, and I've worked with them for all these years, they're great. They do quality work, they're great people. So if you come in with one page, single-sided, black and white, yeah, they can do that for you. Double-sided black and white, double-sided color. If you need a bunch of pages stapled or laminated or spiral bound, they do that too. They will put your name, address, your logo of your company. I'm sorry, there's some kind of siren outside. Your logo on a piece of clothing, a pen and pencil set. Anything that you need to help your business grow, Hewlett Minuteman Press can help you do that. They're open 5 days a week during the summer, and then once the fall really hits after Labor Day, they'll also be open half a day on Saturdays. So give them a call, 516-569-5577, area code 516-569-5577. It is now the dog days of August, not too early to think about holiday cards and Jewish New Year cards. They're known for that, as well as wedding invitations. Hewlett Minuteman Press, they are the copy kings. And if you tell them Dave sent you, you get 10% off any job, big or small. So give them a call, 516-569-5577, Hewlett Minuteman Press. Well, we are not pressed for time here. It's only 11:30 with so much more to do on Dave's Gone By. So we thank you so much for staying with us. Let's do, since we're being cultural, since we're talking about the theater, let's move to something even more hoity-toity, poetry. Yes, because every week we like to do a short poem, a limerick, in fact, about a town or a city in Colorado. We call them Colorado Limericks of the Damned because mostly with limericks, you want to be amusing and, in my case, really horrifying, disgusting, and obscene. So that's just the nature. Don't blame me. Blame Shakespeare. Blame Alexander Pope, perhaps, or no, he wasn't. He was a popet, not a poet. Blame Emily Dickinson for what I'm about to do. But we pick one town in Colorado, and this week, the lucky town is Bethune. Bethune, Colorado, which of course you haven't heard of. Why should you have? But point of them is it's a tiny little place. Back when they did the census in the year 2000. In the year 2000, there were only, literally, 225 people in Bethune, 75 families, or something like that. I don't know if it's mushroomed over the past 18 years. I doubt it. But maybe there's 300 people living there now. Bethune, Colorado, really not known for much at all, except it was the birthplace of actor Denver Pyle. Back in like 1920. You've got a Pyle from Bethune, Colorado. And so in his honor, and in the honor of everybody living there in Bethune, Colorado, this is our Colorado Limerick of the Damned.
A limerick is a comic verse of 5 lines, in which lines 1, 2, and 5 will end with words that rhyme. And likewise, verses 3 and 4 also end with words that rhyme. So this is a limerick. Rocky Mountain.
Our Colorado Limerick of the Damned for this Saturday, August 11th, 2018, for the town of Bethune. Ahem, ahem. A bawdy old bitch from Bethune would rise from her mattress at noon. My husband, she'd grin, is ugly as sin. Thank goodness he's hung like a coon. Thank you. I'm so proud. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we do this every week, the Colorado Limerick of the Damned. And now we go back to the more stead and normal portion of the Dave's Gone By Facebook program of the stream, where we thank once again Ethan McSweeny and Rabbi Sol Solomon for being with us in the Daverhood. And to do that, we kind of, we do a segment every week where we check up on our friends of the Daverhood. Remember I was talking before about how people who've been on the show are friends, and then we're looking for another name for the people who just tune in, like the denizens of the Daverhood or Daverhoodlums. Well, these are the friends. These are folks who've been on the show in the past, and we like to let you know, hey, this is what they're up to as we speak. Thank you. Friends of the Daverhood time here on Dave's Gone By. We'll leave the music going just lightly in the background, perhaps. Yeah, that'd be okay. Anyway, actually, we got to start with a sad one. Unfortunately, we want to. We already mentioned that we lost Charlotte Ray last week. She was on the show about 2.5, 3 years ago. We want to express our condolences to the actress Julie Holston, who lost her husband Ralph Howard this past week. Ralph, if you've heard about Ralph, he was on the Howard Stern show. He was a staffer there, but he had been battling lung disease for a while. And it's kind of interesting because we were going to mention Julie Holston anyway. We did earlier because the great news came this week that Tootsie was coming to Broadway and she would be in it. But right now it's just about really wishing her well and wishing her condolences from the Daverhood to Julie Holston on the loss of her husband. Okay, on to much happier stuff. For example, tomorrow, Melanie, wonderful Melanie from the Woodstock era, Candles in the Rain, Lay Down, that Melanie, brand new key. She will be part of the acts who are doing free summer stage in Central Park. That is tomorrow afternoon. So if you're in New York, you've never seen Melanie, legendary Melanie, go see her tomorrow in Manhattan. On Monday, If you are in Coral Gables, Florida, go to Gable Stage for a free reading of a dark comedy called The Burdens that is being directed by our friend Avi Hoffman. That is Monday evening. And then also on Monday, this is way cool in New York, a guy named a woman named Alexandra Silber wrote a novel called After Anna Tevka, and it's all about what happens to Huddle, one of Tevye's daughters, after the events of Fiddler on the Roof. Okay, so they're going to be doing readings from the book and also songs from the show, and that's going to feature Sheldon Harnick. Now, he won't be performing, he'll just be there, but we all know he co-wrote Fiddler on the Roof. He will be making an appearance. That is happening tomorrow in Manhattan. Among the readers are Patrick Page, who has that wonderful voice, and Santino Fontana. We mentioned him just before because he'll be in Tootsie, and he was in My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, so that's happening after Anna Tevka with Sheldon Harnick in attendance on Monday night. Playing now through Tuesday, Tevye Served Raw, based on the stories of Sholem Aleichem that also did not get into Fiddler on the Roof, that will star our friend Alan Lewis Rickman. I won't be surprised if a little bit of that is in Yiddish, too. That's happening at the Playroom off Broadway. And then this Wednesday, August 15th, Katie Sullivan and our friend Jeff Harner are appearing together at the Laurie Beachman Theater in the West Bank Cafe in Midtown Manhattan. I hate when I have to, when I do radio and I need to scratch my nose. I can do it, like, off camera here. It's like, itch, nose, some poo-poo in there, gotta do it, and then the camera's picking every moment of it up. Anyway, it's time for an Austin Pendleton alert. Austin Pendleton alert, yay! We love him, this talented and ubiquitous person of the New York theater world. He is both an actor and a director. So every week, it's not that he's in something. Every week, he's in something different. He's either giving a seminar, or he's acting, appearing in something, or he's directing something. So there are literally two, Austin Pendleton mentions today in Friends of the Daverhood. First of all, he is staging and starring as Henry VI, speaking of Shakespeare, in War of the Roses at 124 Bank Street Theater in Manhattan. That is happening through August 19th. And then, at the same time, towards the end of August, now through August 26th, Austin Pendleton is directing a play called The Saintliness of Marjorie Kemp, and that is happening at the Duke on 42nd Street. So 2 Austin Pendleton alerts! Oh yeah, go Austin. And now, oh my God, we cannot get away from Fiddler on the Roof. We've mentioned it like 5 times already. Here's another. They keep extending the National Yiddish Theater's Fiddler on the Roof. They're doing it in Yiddish, the National Yiddish Theater, low budget, but apparently it's wonderful. The reviews have been great. It's directed by Joel Grey, the legendary actor from Cabaret, of course, featuring musical director Zalman Mlatek, so the guy who's did the orchestrations for this version. He's a friend of the Daverhood, as is, as we mentioned, the lyricist Sheldon Harnick. So go see it, Fiddler on the Roof at the National Yiddish Theater. I have it down here till September 2nd, but I think it just got extended again through part of October. So you have a bunch of chances to catch that. Also, speaking of chances to catch, you have Desperate Measures, a very well-received musical comedy at the York Theater, which features music by our friend David Friedman. He actually won the 2018 Drama Desk Award for Desperate Measures. Go see it at the York Theater off Broadway. Now, moving to Broadway, we know The Band's Visit, which has a score by David Yazbek, our friend. That's at the Barrymore Theater, and now it is on sale through February of 2019. It's in an open run, but you can buy tickets anywhere between now and February. Come From Away, a show I absolutely loved on Broadway, features a score by Irene Sankoff and David Hine, and I think also the book is by them too. That's at the Schoenfeld Theater. School of Rock, that will be closing in a couple of months, so you've got a little while longer to see it. It's got lyrics by our friend Glenn Slater. LaChanze is in Summer, the Donna Summer musical, at the L'Enfantin Theater. Daniel Breaker is playing Aaron Burr in Hamilton, as if any of us can actually have the money to see that. Jim Caruso's Cast Party, Monday night's act Birdland, so we're moving into off-Broadway and cabaret there. And if you want to find out about nightclubs and cabaret and theater in New York, a great website to go to is StageBuddy.com, founded by our friend Evan Seplow. Speaking of websites, you know Dr. Demento is still doing Dr. Demento shows, new ones and archiving the old ones at drdemento.com. And in terms of TV, there are two television shows on Manhattan Cable that review Broadway and off-Broadway theater. One of them is called Two on the Aisle, and it features both of our friends, Charlie Gross and Leslie Hoban Blake. And then there's another one called High Drama, hosted by Eva Heineman. You can see them both on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, mnn.org. Give a shout out to Bob Cudmore, doing podcasts about upstate New York history at bobcudmore.com. Giving a shout out, of course, to Catherine Russell, who has been off-Broadway in Perfect Crime since that thing opened 31 years ago. She has spent more than 21,000 hours on stage in that play alone. Gonna give a shout out, let's say, to who else? How about to Jeannie Lieberman, a critic and also the editor of theaterscene.com. Theaterscene.com. Yeah, and go read. In this time that is so horrible for newspapers, you can still read Phil Mushnick writing about sports in the New York Post. Well, I hope I've been a good sport in championing the Friends of the Daverhood. It says it's an adagio, but it's not very adagio-esque. Anyway, I'm David-esque here, sitting at my David desk, doing the Dave's Gone By Facebookio program of the stream for you. Oh, and welcome to David from my high school, Dr. David. Oh boy, I could have used you like a month ago when my back was going out every morning, but it's kind of hard to digitally help people that way. But I hope you had a great summer, David, and Melba, and the other David, and Frank, and Jeff, and Lawrence, and Lisa, and Art, and everybody who's been tuning in. Oh, we have more show for you, ladies and gentlemen. We do indeed. We've got Rabbi Sol Solomon's Rabbinical Reflection, where he'll be telling some jokes and then giving his interpretations in a Jewish style of them. It's not so much Freudian interpretations, it's more of a Sigmund Freud interpretation, as only Rabbi Sol can do. Sorry, just greasing the whistle a little bit. Oh my God. If there's a heaven on earth, it's basically drowning in mint iced tea. Anywho. So we've got that coming up, and we'll also have Dave's Big Dictionary, where I'll be talking a little bit about the periodic table of all things. But before we get to that, as promised, oh my friends, this is a big moment. This is happening. I can't believe it. It's taken so much time. It's taken literally months to do this. But we're going to finish A Cow for Hansel. Yes, I know. Gather around your computers, hug each other closely, make your popcorn, put up that roaring fire, even though it's 90 degrees everywhere in America right now, because we're going to tell and finish telling Erna Holyer's story about Hansel und the cow that he has spent this whole book trying to get.
Tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story, remember what you said. You promised me, you said you would, you gotta give in so I'll be good. Tell me a story, then I'll go to bed.
See, here's the deal, and I don't have to tell this story ever again. I was in our auto shop almost half a year ago at this point, having our brake pads done on our Subaru. This is before we started dealing with the hail damage. It was time. Our Subaru is, it's a Subaru. It's a 2007 model, and we got it in 2009 or something like that. So it was time for the brake pads to be done. While I'm waiting to talk to the wonderful people who work there, I go poking through their basket of things to keep people occupied and entertained in case they're waiting while something is being fixed. So, of course, you got the local newspaper, the Greeley Tribune, in there. You've got auto magazines. I think you probably have a Reader's Digest. And, of course, these books and magazines for kids, because they're the worst. They're the ones who are sitting there while mommy's dealing with, fix this, pay this, do that, what's wrong. So they got the Dr. Seuss things and the regular children's books, but they also had this. I saw this cover. I saw this book. It was like nothing I'd ever seen in terms of a children's book. And I was like, oh. And look at the illustration. Look at the care. And sort of the feudal German pre-Nazi drawing of Hansel, there he is, young boy Hansel, und cow, in a cow for Hansel, which, and even more interesting, and I didn't know this at the time when I asked to borrow the book, was the author, Ernie Holier, it says, is actually a woman named Erna Holier, so I'm sure she went by the nickname Ernie, which was helpful if you wanted to sell a boy's book, because what boy back in 1967 was going to buy a book written by a woman? Those were the times, I guess. So, and it's a very boys-ish book, and it has to do with a young Bavarian child. That's not that young anymore. Old enough to work. He certainly does a lot of work in the book. He's poor. His family is very poor but loving, and they do their best, scraping together to get by. And what happened was, and this is magnificent. If you go to Amazon, because I mean this book is long out of print, but if you look, not even at the description of the book on Amazon, but if you look for the reviews on Amazon, and there are no reviews of it, here's the one line about the book. Here is why I had to grab this book. This was printed on Amazon. It says, after the cattle plague killed off many of the farm animals in the village of Oberhausen, Hans Hohenleitner's great ambition was to own a cow. How could I turn down the opportunity to read a book about a German child? His family has just been ruined by a cattle plague, and more than anything, more than a girlfriend, more than wealth and riches and fame, he wants a cow. So I got this book and I started reading it to make fun of it, essentially on Dave's Gone By, to go through the book and poke fun and probably stop after a chapter or two. And what happened is, the book is actually pretty good. And it's a good story. It's a little hyper-religious in parts for my taste. And then some parts have not aged that well since 1967. But at the same time, there's still that basic kernel of, here's a good kid. He's working hard. He does whatever he can. He helps his family. He goes to work for a farm that's a few houses down the road that farmer is doing a bit better. And he allows Hansel to use a patch of land that nothing grows on, that is completely overrun with mountain goats and bad animals. And Hansel says, look, you don't even have to pay me. If you let me grow my own potato crop on that land, then I will... that'll just be enough. And I can take those potatoes, sell them, so my family can buy a cow. And the neighbor agrees to do this. So as we're getting into it, I still poke fun of the story, but I have fun with it. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, wow, what's going to happen? Because the family's now at their lowest ebb. Well, the veterinarian who couldn't save the family's cows, well, you know how veterinarians are, they still are going to be paid whether the patient lives or dies, as is any doctor on your HMO. So he's the bad guy in the piece, the evil. I'm going to have him represented by this worm today. I don't think he'll show up in this, because maybe he will, but it's hard to see. But this is a worm, and it's too hard to see. Okay, take my word for it, that is a worm. He will play the veterinarian today. Now, this veterinarian is telling the family, you owe me this money and you're paying me 10 marks or 10 crowns a month. It's not enough. And if you're not paid by November, end of the month, you will be thrown out of your house. And the family is now worried that they're going to have to move to the big city and live with family. It's kind of like an Anatevka moment for the Hohenleitner family. So they're facing this. Hansel, he grew his potatoes, he worked so hard, he went to market to sell them, did not get the price that he expected for them. So, he got some money, and that ended up going to pay the veterinarian, and the veterinarian was also going to take his prize calf. Didn't do that, but it's a calf, he can't eat him yet. They need it for milk and babies. All this stuff going on, and Hans has just gone through, so he fell off a tree, he was attacked by a wild boar, he was attacked, a sheep attacked by wild dogs. This kid, oh my God, this, not a life. I've had a bad summer, he's had a worse summer, and yet he still puts his faith in God that everything's going to work out. So, we're coming upon the very last chapter of A Cow for Hansel. I have not read this in advance. Usually, I take a few moments to skim the chapter to see if there's anything funny or cute that I can poke fun at. But I'm as curious as you about how this all turns out. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to end happily. We don't know. It could be a Stephen King kind of a thing. We're not sure. So, at this point, Hans... Oh, and where we last left off, the father was going back to meet with a banker again. Early in the book, he and the dad go into town. Dad meets with a banker and can't get the loan that he needs. He just doesn't have the collateral for it. But now something might change with that. So they're in town, they're meeting with a banker, the father's meeting with him and calls Hans in to meet with the banker. We conclude now. Hansel and Cow, with a chapter. Read it, kiss it. I feel like Max Bialystock finding Springtime for Hitler. It's like, oh, touch it, kiss it. A beautiful cow. The beautiful cow. Oh, wow. Ha. It's normally lighter in my office. I'm going to wear my special 3D glasses for this. 3D just means that I can see three things at once, and my name's Dave. Much better. "This is my boy, sir," said Papa, introducing Hans to the banker. Hans shook hands with the elderly, smooth-skinned man. A huge diamond glittered on the banker's little finger. Have banksters changed any? I wonder if back in those days, too, they were lifting restrictions on fraud. But anyway... "Your papa tells me that you are an enterprising young man. He says you are conscientious, courageous, a hard worker, and very persevering. I like this combination." Hans did not know what to say. Hans is going to be played... Normally, potatoes play potatoes in the book, but we're giving Potato the honor of playing Hans. So Hans is just standing there being, like, aghast at these nice words from the banker. Wow. Very nice. Okay. The banker leaned back in his brown leather chair and studied Hans. "Your papa says you worked for Mr. Kaiser all summer and went into the potato business besides." "I can play two roles, Daddy." Okay, you can be Potato again. "Yay, I'm Potato! I'm also, Hans, but I'm Potato now. Whee!" Okay. Don't hog the spotlight. Hans looked down at his shoes. Well, he's got one of his shoes off at the moment, but there you go. Let me pull this down. This is kind of distracting me here. That's better. Hans looked down at his shoes. He says, "The potatoes didn't bring in very much money, sir. Papa could pay back the loan if I had worked for wages instead." "Don't blame yourself, Hans. We all suffer setbacks at times. It is part of life and cannot be helped. Setbacks teach us to be smarter next time." "Yes, sir." Says, I don't know why Hans suddenly went falsetto. Maybe because normally Potato talks in falsetto. I'm going to do Hans in more of a regular voice, but kind of interesting that Hans didn't make any mistakes at all. He worked his ass off, and then he has to listen to some banker tell him, "Well, yes, setbacks tell us what we did wrong." It's like, he didn't do anything wrong. The cattle were dead. He had no choice to do what he was doing. Anyway, "I like the way you tackled your problems, Hans. It shows me that you don't take the easy way out. With a farmer like you coming up on the Hohenleitner farm, there isn't much risk in extending the loan." The banker smiled magnanimously. "Aha! You mean we can stay on the farm? The banker nodded his balding head. Had to throw that part in. Okay, there we go. Nod. It's good your father came in before the first, because I can do something for him. The banker rose. The teller will take care of the paperwork, Herr Hohenleitner. It has been nice meeting your son. He is a fine young man. They shook hands with the banker, then headed for the door. Hans noticed out of the corner of his eyes that Papa brushed something out of his eyes. The farm was saved for the moment, but it still did not have the young cow with calf that would put it back on its feet. But at least, okay, spared for a little while. The teller drew up the note. Papa signed it. As Papa left the bank, Hans noticed that he seemed to walk just a little bit straighter. Okay, can we do this, Potato? Yes. Well done, Potato. Well done. On the way back to the station, they passed the newspaper office building. Papa read the front page of the newspaper in the display window. Something to do about Jews bombing something. Just kidding. Hans scanned the for sale advertisements. He noticed that the columns were filled with articles and animals people wanted to sell or trade. Some of the town's farmers offered cows in exchange for hay. Several farmers wanted to trade potatoes for hay. Hay! Nicely done. Hans turned the puzzling situation over in his mind. Could it be that the town's cattle had not suffered from the hoof and mouth disease? Could it be that the young cattle that had spent the summer high up in the alpine pastures had been spared? Or could it be that the town's farmers had planted everything to potatoes like the Kaiser farmer, and they were now short of hay? See? Yeah, hay! So exciting, isn't it? It is. If he had only kept his potatoes. Hans ran his index finger along the cold glass pane and read again an advertisement that had caught his attention. Lack hay? Oh, this is someone who lacks hay. Lack hay. Will trade young Tyrolean cow with calf in exchange for feeding 7 heifers through winter. Desperate. Inquire in office. Look here, Papa! Exclaimed Hans, pointing to the ad. Oh, there's a big picture in here, which I will save for you. We'll go back to it, I promise. 7 heifers eat a lot of hay, Hansel. Papa rubbed his chin. Rub. We have barely touched our old hay since our cows died, Papa. Our hay mow is still full. I think we can make it, Hans, Papa exclaimed as he rushed into the newspaper's office. On his way out, he was clutching and reading a slip of paper with a farmer's address. They hastened to the upper part of town and found the house. Papa knocked. Noisy ducks splashed in the water of a nearby brook. Kind of a splashing noise there. Their squawking made it impossible to hear anything. And so, kind of a... All right, make believe it's a squawk, will you? Papa knocked on the door again. I don't think anybody is home, Hansel, said Papa. I don't think they can hear because of the ducks, Papa. Let's try the barn door. Papa knocked, and soon the farmer opened the door and invited them in. The cows and heifers came down from the mountains last week, the farmer explained. The cow in the stall over there is the one I would give you for feeding my heifers through the winter. Hans's heartbreak quickened at the sight of the beautiful cow. She even had horns, must be a Jewish cow, bright eyes and a short, well-shaped head. She was shorter than the local breeds and was well-proportioned. Yes, indeed. Hans stroked her hide. The fur was still coarse and thick from her stay in the Alps. And by the way, I promised you a picture. Look at this cow! Just feast your eyes. In all its beautiful bovinity. Oh, isn't it utterly beautiful? Oh, it's music to Hans's ears. Oh, yeah. Oh, so exciting. I'm just getting to the next thing here. Papa tested the cow's fat-covered ribcage and her growing udder. Honk, 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 honk. He walked the cow up and down behind the stalls, and there was no trace of a limp. Papa's face glowed with satisfaction. Her calves will be small, but since she comes from very good stock, you'll probably want to keep her female calves. The farmer brought ropes. If you will take proper care of my cows and heifers, she is all yours. Is it a deal? It's a deal! The men's handshake sealed the bargain. Papa took a shortcut to the railroad station. They loaded the cow and heifers onto the train. I mean, it'd be cool if you could do that on the Long Island Railroad or Metro North. It's like, because people bring dogs sometimes and seeing eye things and animals in containers. But it's like, oh, wait, no, cow coming on. Knowing, and of course the LIR conductors, many of whom are assholes, he'd be like, no, he needs his own ticket. It can be a senior if he's old enough, but I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, they bring the cow on the train, and they climb into the coach. Hans pressed his flushed face against the cold window. The winter's first snowflakes were beginning to fall. Hans kept wiping the steam off the train window all the way home until they came to his potato field. Mr. Kaiser and his horses had done a good job dragging away the remaining boulders that Hans had not been able to haul away. I don't know what your mama, or I don't know whether Mama told you, Hansel, Papa said, but Sepp dropped in yesterday. Sepp is Mr. Kaiser's son, and Hans kind of was friends with him when he was working on that other farm. So Sepp dropped in yesterday, says Hans's father. His father says, we can have the field by the tracks for free next year, and we can borrow his horses when he doesn't need them. God bless Mr. Kaiser, Papa. We can use an extra field next year, Hans said with feeling. It seemed unbelievable. He never dreamed that a person could receive so many favors in one day. Papa nodded. Mr. Kaiser is a good man. It's too bad that most people don't know him better, Papa. Yes, Hansel. People tend to jump to conclusions rather than finding out for themselves. Kind of a Boo Radley moment in this book. Papa? Yes, Hansel. You know, Hans hesitated, and then he went on. When I first saw Mr. Kaiser, that rocky potato field, Rocky Potato was eating tomato. Watch a potato. Okay. When I first saw Mr. Kaiser and his rocky potato field and the cruel veterinarian, I knew he'd show up. I jumped to conclusions. Did you? Papa fixed his steady gaze on Hans. I jumped to conclusions, Hans repeated, and I was scared. But I learned something, Papa. What I mean is, if you tackle your problems instead of running away from them, they can usually be solved in time. Giving up doesn't do any good at all. I'm glad you're finding that out, Hansel, Papa smiled. And you know what? Mr. Kaiser found out the same thing. Mr. Kaiser? Yes. After his wife died, he went around as though he had herpes, gonorrhea, syphilis? No, as if he had nothing left to live for. Most of the villagers couldn't understand his seriousness, but Widow Braun looked beyond the surface. Did you know they're getting married? They are? Thank God for that! Hans felt warm with gladness, and then a little embarrassed because he also saw them going. I don't want to see Mr. Kaiser and the widow doing that, but anyway, the train rolled into Hugelfing. Yes, there's nothing like Hugelfing. Getting cow and heifers off the train was a hard job. A cold winter wind was blowing across the road, hurling leaves and snowflakes into Hans's face. But Hans did not mind. Driving the cows through the village drew a lot of attention. People came from all directions to look at the herd. this direction, and then that direction, just coming from everywhere. They wanted to know where the cattle had come from. When their new cow, the other cows and heifers, the sheep and the goat were at last safely in the barn, Papa smiled as he hadn't smiled in a long time. Hans was glad to see Papa happy again. The barn glowed with a new warmth. Hans filled the feeding trough with choicest hay. He did not even mind the goat's greedy stealing. Ooh, that goat, ooh. "We'll sell the goat as soon as our cow has milk," said Mama, her cheeks pink with joy. And her face was pink with joy as well. Okay. Hans took a long look at the goat. There wasn't anything really wrong with having a goat as well as a cow. I guess he's not kidding. "I don't mind her anymore, Mama. I guess I can learn to drink goat's milk as well as anyone else," he said. Mama hugged him as she hadn't hugged him for years. "God has blessed us more than we deserve," she said. Oh, bullshit. The things this family has gone through. The pain, the suffering, the dying of the cows, the evil veterinarian, being turned down by the bank guy, the kid being attacked half the time by wild animals, working like crazy, being disappointed, and it's like, more than we deserve. We're poor, nothing little people. We don't want anything, just to live and hate that attitude, because it's the attitude I've had for 54 years. But anyway, "God has blessed us more than we deserve," said Hans's mother. "Isn't there something we should do, Hansel?" Hans saw Mama's sparkling eyes. I guess she doused them in sparkling water, and he knew what she meant. Together, Papa, Mama, and Hansel knelt down in the straw and thanked God for his kindness and generosity. When they lifted their heads, Hans noticed that the wind had died down, and snowflakes as big as silver coins were drifting past the window. For a while, they whirled and danced in the air. Then slowly, they cloaked the village with a soft white blanket. And that is the end of A Cow for Hansel here on Dave's Gone By Erna Holyer. Quite a lady. I've been trying to get her autobiography. She wrote one late in her life. I think back in 2000. She died in 2007 and she wrote a book in 2001. So, I mean, she went through everything. She got out of Nazi Europe, and she had breast cancer and other kinds of cancers, and she had one husband, and it's an amazing life that Erna Holyer had. So certainly we thank her in memory and in absentia for giving us so much material for all these many weeks in the Daverhood. That was part 20, the final part of A Cow for Hansel here on Dave's Gone By. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed reading it. I'm tempted, more than tempted. I'm probably going to do something like this again very soon, and I have a couple of possible books that are actually in my office at school that may be the next StoryTime edition in Dave's Gone By. They're very different kinds of books, so you'll just have to tune in the weeks ahead to see, how can he possibly top A Cow for Hansel here on the Dave's Gone By Facebookio program of the stream, where it is 10 after 12 Mountain Time here in Greeley, Colorado, where I, Dave, do this program. It is our 662nd episode. We've called it Sweeney Odd in honor of our fine guest, director Ethan McSweeny, talking to Rabbi Sol Solomon. Now, you know that you can go to Ethan McSweeney's theater now in Stanton, Virginia, the American Shakespeare Center, and start seeing the shows that they're doing there. If you want to know more about Rabbi Sol, then check his website, shalomdammit.com, shalom, D-A-M-M-I-T, shalomdammit.com, and that is a place to read and hear his rabbinical reflections, his, you can watch 10 episodes of his wonderful television program that he did for Long Island Cable TV about 10 years ago. You can even also see a recording, a video of his stage show, Shalom Dammit, An Evening with Rabbi Sol Solomon, back when he first did it at the Richmond Shepherd Theater off Broadway. So it's the full 2-hour version before he cut it to a 1-act. So you can see what worked, what didn't quite work, what did work but had to be cut for time. I think it's a marvelous piece. So please go check that out. It's all at shalomdammit.com. Now, I bring up Rabbi Sol because he's back with us now. He hasn't done a rabbinical reflection for us in a while. So it's time. It's long overdue. I think his last one was when we did our Tony show. His reflections are mini sermons. He talks about the state of the world, the state of Judaism, stuff in our culture and politics. But other times, he just wants to have a little fun. And he usually does that by gathering some jokes, new and old, telling the jokes, and then, of course, having his own Solomonic interpretations and wisdom grafted onto them. So, it's Rabbi Sol. What else can I say? So, it's his rabbinical reflection. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the one, the only, the Jewish Rabbi Sol Solomon. Hello, it's me, Rabbi Sol, with rabbinical reflections for you all. I come from Temple Sons of Bitches here in Great Neck, New York. Shut up and pay attention to me. Shalom, damn it! This is Rabbi Sol Solomon with a rabbinical reflection for the week of August 11th, 2018. Well, my friends, I hope you've been having a terrific summertime. I haven't. I've been in pain, I'm getting angry letters from my accountant, and my local deli raised prices on everything but the free mustard. So I am seething, my friends. But what better way to get me out of my funk, out of my relentlessly pissed-off state, than with jokes? I love sharing jokes with a Jewish flavor and then offering a bit of interpretation, some Talmudic reconnaissance, if you will, to put the comedy in a kosher context. Full disclosure, this joke comes from the comedian Jackie the Joke Man Martling, who is not Jewish, but might be circumcised. It's about a guy who has suffered for years with terrible headaches. He's been to doctors, neurologists, acupuncture, meditation. Nothing helps. Finally, he visits a specialist who checks his eyes, checks his pulse, listens to his heart, and tells him, okay, I've got good news and I got bad news. The good news is you can cure your headaches completely, once and for all. That's amazing, the guy says. What do I do? The bad news, the specialist says, is that you must have your testicles removed. What? Screams the man. Castration? I'm sorry, says the doctor. That's the only way. Chop off the testicles and you'll be fine. Distraught, the man goes home to think it over. But he can't think because his headaches are so bad. Finally, he says, I can't take this anymore, I'll do it. So he goes for the surgery, cuts his nuts off. After a couple of days recovering, he's walking around the house, cleaning, dusting, and he realizes, oh my God, I'm not in pain. My headache is gone, I feel great. He starts dancing, singing, he's so happy he doesn't know what to do with himself. That's when he thinks, I feel like a new man, so I'm gonna change my life. And the first step is getting myself a new suit of clothes. I feel like $1 million. Now I want to dress like it. So the guy does some research and learns that the best tailor in New York is, of course, in the garment district. He makes an appointment saying money's no object, shows up at the cramped little shop on 38th Street and asks for the famous Chaim Shmulevitz. After a couple of minutes, a wizened old Jewish man shuffles out of the back room. He says nothing as he stares at the visitor, taking him in from head to toe. Okay, says Chaim, you need a Borsalino hat, short brim, size 7 1/4. Then we'll get you a double-breasted executive cut suit, 2 buttons, size 40 regular. The pants, also 40, with a 28 inseam, silk tie with patterning, shoes, you're an 8.5 wide width, Oxford. Oh, and I can't leave out the underwear. You take a Hanes medium V-neck and size 38 briefs. Come back in a week, and you're all set. Wow, says the guy. I heard you were good, but that's amazing. Just by looking at me, you got my whole style to a T, including the sizes. Of course I did, says Chaim. I'm not in the business 60 years without being the best. However, says the guy, you did make one mistake. For the underpants, I take a 34 brief, not a 38. Mister, don't tell me my job. You take a medium undershirt and size 38 on the briefs, and that's that. Excuse me, says the man. You may know your job, but I know myself, and I've been shopping for my own clothes all my life. I take a 34, or I take my business elsewhere. Okay, says Chaim. The customer is always right, even when he's wrong. You want a 34? 34 it is. But I warn you, if you wear size 34 briefs, your left testicle is going to slide out the side and hang down. The right testicle is going to spill out and mash against your thigh. The middle will pull up in between. You will get the most terrible headaches. Now, what do we learn from this joke? First of all, if you do business with an old Jewish man who has 6 decades experience, you probably want to listen to him. Just as when we consider laws in the Bible, Hashem invented these rules for living 2,000 years ago. So, even if we think we know better, we probably don't know better. So, if you've been coveting thy neighbor's ox, even today, you're better off disregarding your neighbor and buying your own ox and getting therapy. We also learn from this joke that sometimes the solution to a problem is easier than you think. You just haven't thinked it yet. God knows how many different chemical compounds Alexander Fleming was futzing around with before he came back from a vacation, saw mold growing in a petri dish, and bing bang boom, goodbye syphilis. So, whenever you think you have a solution for a crisis, take one more moment to make sure you're not cutting off your beitzim to spite your punim. On to the next joke. Irving, my second cousin, is a very troubled man. Every night he gets drunk on Manischewitz, and then his wife starts yelling at him, "Oh, you're killing yourself with that alcohol. You keep drinking that much, you're gonna die." Finally, last week, Irving wakes up after passing out the night before, looks across the room, and starts to laugh. "Serves you right, Marjorie," he yells. "You're so worried about me killing myself with booze, but you're the one lying dead with your head bashed in." What do we learn from that joke? Nothing. We learn absolutely nothing from that horrible joke. Let us just move on. Although he denies it, my Uncle Benny has been having hearing problems. He and my Aunt Sophie argue about it all the time. Finally, she demands he visit an audiologist. Benny tells the guy, "I'm fine, there's no problem. I'm only here because my wife says she has seen some changes." "Oh," says the doctor, "can you describe the symptoms?" "Of course I can," my uncle says. "There's Homer, who's bald and yellow, his wife Marge, who has big blue hair." Ah, the vanity of older men. We don't want to admit that once we're 50, everything goes downhill faster than a raisinette falling out of the box and rolling under your couch. For many of us, admitting to a physical or mental weakness is tantamount to giving up. Today we spot one gray hair in the beard, tomorrow we're in a nursing home. But as we live longer and longer in the world, we have to get used to diminished capacity and asking for help when we need it. If you can't walk across the room without a cane, you don't vista weg forever in a chair. You grab a cane and walk. If you have diabetes, you poke your thumb every morning and get on with your day. If it's your anniversary and your wife wants a little fun, you take a blue pill. You wait an hour, and then you give her the best 2.5 minutes of her life. In all cases, you acknowledge the obstacle and then work your way around it. Just remember, whether it's diabetes, hearing, or headaches, change your underwear first. You never know. This has been a rabbinical reflection from Rabbi Sol Solomon, Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. On the great Rabbi Sol Solomon here on the Dave's Gone By Facebookio program of the stream. The opinions expressed by Rabbi Sol Solomon and the jokes told do not necessarily represent the views of this radio program or its host, although they usually do. So we thank Rabbi Sol, and remember, to find out more about him and to hear more of his rabbinical reflections and read them too, you can go to shalomdammit.com. Well, it is 20 after 12 Mountain Time here in the Radio Daverhood, doing a different Radio Dave location this week, as I've said before, but we're still making whoopee, ladies and gentlemen, and we do have one segment left in this week's show, live here on this Saturday, August 11th, 2018, our Sweeney Odd telecast, and it has to do with words. Of course I'm going to pick something that has to do with words. We've been doing this for a few months, and I really enjoy it. It's called Dave's Big Dictionary. Here it is, the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary, 75,000 definitions. Normally my wife will be the one early in the show. She will thumb through and put her thumb or finger down on a word at complete random, and then it's my job to come up with something to talk about for 5 or 10 minutes about that word later on in the show. Well, Joyce, as I mentioned early in the program, is away from us this week. She's out having a gay old time in Philadelphia, going to conference there. So I'm kind of stuck with myself alone, and what happens to me? Well, yeah, my finger way early in the show landed on, of all things, an entire page. A page that looks like this in the dictionary. I don't know if you can read it or see it. It's really, really small. As a matter of fact, I'm going to probably need my glasses again for this, but it's the periodic table of elements. That's what my finger landed on for Dave's Big Dictionary. So for all of you still listening to the show, we got Melba and David and Michael and Kathleen, who has the same name as a famous actress, but is a different Kathleen. Hello. And to Bert and to Kat Ann. So great to see all of you here on Dave's Gone By. Yes, this segment is Dave's Big Dictionary. Extra, tell all about it. It's Dave's Big Dictionary. Yes, indeed. So here's what we do on this. I now have just a couple of minutes to talk about the periodic table. That's where my finger landed. That's, that is going to be my subject of Dave's Big Dictionary today. What about the periodic table of elements? So let's take a quick look at it, or at least I will. Let's see if these glasses are even good enough for me to see this here. Not really. Well, as I mentioned earlier, helium is still number one with a bullet. They haven't been able to displace helium as number one. And then something called LR. Oh, no, it might be L. No, it's capital L, small r, is number 103. Lurium. And by the way, as you all know, that is in the actinide series. And those were the ones that weren't there, I think, back when I was going to school in junior high school and high school, and they had the periodic tables on the walls. I don't think they had lurium and, oh my god, no, they have N-O, okay? Noium. It's an element that you never actually want to use. They've got MD, which has been doctored with, so you don't want to use that one either. They've got FM, which, you have to use transistors for. Let's try some more of these. ES. Oh, my Aunt Esther is an element. And she certainly has some elements of fun to her. 97 is BB. Yeah, BB. We've got 93 is AM. So I'm not sure what it is, but we do know what it am. I amuse myself, if no one else, with this sort of thing. Oh, and number 94, element number 94 on the periodic table is poo. I shit you not. It's poo. P-U. Rather smelly element it must be. Who else? 92 is U. Did you know that you were an element? It's just the letter U. I don't know. Is that uranium? Wouldn't that be number 238 or something? Anyway, do we have any other good ones? We've got number 61. Element 61 is PM. So if you want to message me about that, that'd be cool. No, number 66 is DY. So don't touch that one or else you'll die. Number 68, ER. What do I want to say about number 68, ER? This is the kind of comedy Dave does on the... All right, what else we got there? We've got other elements. Number 109. Ooh, MT. I guess that's not full, it's MT. Number 48 is CD. So I guess you can put women's clothes on that one. We've got number 31, capital G, small a. So that one's on my mind. We have... That one was subtle, wasn't it? And you still got the early ones. The ones that we all remember from school. There's magnesium up there. Sodium. Chloride, of course. Helium. Helium is number 2. So after hydrogen, you got helium. He. What else? Number 29 is capital C, small u. So... Oh yes, I see you. Oh, and right before it, I'm not sure if Ni is the one for nickel. So Ni, which is me. They are the scientists who say me. How much more can I milk this? I'm not sure. Number 39 is the letter Y. Don't know, just is Y. Oh. I'll try one more. Oh, I should have quit while I was ahead, shouldn't I? Let's see. 84 is capital P, small o. So it's Po. But, maybe one day it will be rich. Anywho, so that's part one of looking back at something that I would say that I haven't seen in so many, many years, but it's not true, because actually one of the classrooms that I teach in at UNC, and I teach English, but it shows you where they throw teachers and students anywhere they can, is in a building that also is devoted to the sciences. So here I am dealing with English composition and research papers, and it's like on the wall is the periodic table. And I was in that room 32 times last spring, just a couple of months ago, and I can't say that I ever really stared at and looked at and checked out the periodic table and said, how many, do they have all 103 or however? It's actually more than that, because the bottom table isn't the last one. The last one is number 112, which is CN. If they match 112CN with number 7N, you have a TV network there. It's a thought. But we all remember, thinking about the periodic table does just make me remember high school and science classes, which even though I don't have the brain for it, I am not a science-related person, and I have no head for the higher mathematics. I didn't, biology was cool, because biology was mostly memorization and how things work, and this part of the body is called this, and that part of the body is... Don't ask me to dissect a frog, not because I'm squeamish about that. I'm squeamish about human blood and shots and stuff like that, but dissecting a frog was just along the lines of, it was dead already. Didn't really mind that much cutting it open. It didn't freak me. And even opening it up and looking inside, it was just like I couldn't follow it. There'd be a diagram on the board, or back then they had these transparencies. And so they'd show what the inside of a frog was meant to look like, what the parts were labeled. And it should correspond to the frog that you have on the lab desk in front of you. And it didn't. The liver was where the heart should have been. The lung was... I couldn't find the lung. I couldn't find this piece and that part. The cloaca I was able to find. Always able somehow to find the frog's cloaca. But all the rest of the bits of the little tadpole or toad that was in formaldehyde there, couldn't do it. It was splayed out in front of me. all the organs were seemingly there, but they weren't in color like they were on the chart. And I couldn't tell it, well, if that's that, shouldn't that be there? And I knew right then and there I would not be not be a heart surgeon or any kind of medical, surgical doctor type person, not because I'm squeamish with blood or cutting into things, but just like when I got there, I'd be like, yeah, let's move that around a little bit. That's an ovary. I guess that should come down. Who the hell knows? Couldn't do it. I didn't mind doing it, but not my métier, shall we say. So it reminds me of that. It reminds me of chemistry. And I also enjoyed chemistry. I liked the logic of the way these elements would bond together. That if you put this with Na and Cl, it creates salt. Because and you start drawing these things of those little hexagons and pentagrams and or pentagons, excuse me. Sometimes I was at war with the Pentagon, but that's something else. No, but they connect them and they form these chains and the helixes, and I found that fascinating and I was able to follow it. I thought that was kind of cool. However, dealing with open flames and test tubes and Bunsen burners, I never had an accident, I never dropped anything, I never burned myself, and yet I always felt I was one moment away from doing so. I got the little tongs, and I remember, I literally have sense memory of my fingers almost shaking, holding the tongs of a burner over the flame with my goggles on and thinking, if I do this just 10 seconds too long, the glass will break, shards will fly everywhere into my fellow students, and I'll fail. I'll fail the course for the day. Forget hurting anybody. It's going to be bad for me. So I went through it and saw the chemical changes that the compounds made, but that too was not for me. And then I went on to physics, and forget physics. Physics was the one that I couldn't even understand. And that was the one I didn't have to do anything. The professor, the teacher, would point a laser now and again to wake us all up. But in terms of having to cut things open, having to take blood, having to take chemicals and pour them and burn them and heat them and put on an oven, and no, physics, you just sort of sat there and did word problems and tried to understand Newton's laws of things, and I was just like, bye, I'm out of here. Mentally completely checked out. But at that point, at least we weren't dealing with this periodic table, which I kind of so when I see or think about a periodic table, it makes me think about all those years in school, in the classroom. Didn't matter what subject it was. You would look on one of the walls, and there would be that cool periodic table. And sometimes during homeroom when you're bored, it's one of those things you start to try to memorize, and it's like, hydrogen 1, helium 2, and this, that, and that, because this one, it doesn't actually say it underneath on this list, but in the, I remember in the tables that they had on the walls back at our school, they would actually have the name, not just the abbreviation and the letter, but the actual name of the element. And that was cool. So you could remember, you could learn, this is cesium, this is magnesium, this is, let's try another one here. What do we got here? What is TC? The hell would talcum, maybe it's talcum. I don't know. ZR. I think the best way to end this, I kind of tailed off there, I'm sorry. I was going so well there, talking about the periodic table, and I didn't know what the hell I'd talk about. But yeah, we're a week away from school starting here again at the University of Northern Colorado, and the teachers go back into conferences this week, and I've got to get my syllabi online and get a couple more things copied. So already, even though it's still a week away, I feel it. I feel school starting again. So it is kind of apt that I came up with the periodic table. So, I'll have to go here to find it. And it occurs to me that it is a salubrious time to play at least part of one of the classic numbers by maybe the greatest comic songwriter of all time, Tom Lehrer.
There's antimony, arsenic, aluminum, selenium, and hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen and rhenium, and nickel, neodymium, neptunium, germanium, and iron, americium, ruthenium, uranium, europium, zirconium, lutetium, vanadium, and lanthanum, and osmium, and astatine, and radium, and gold, protactinium, and indium, and gallium, and iodine, and thorium, and thulium, and thallium.
One of the few songs where he didn't actually write most of the lyrics, they were written for him. And yes, people have asked me, why don't I get Tom Lehrer on the show? I mean, my gosh, how do you not want to talk to Tom Lehrer? And believe me, a few years ago I tried. I actually called him, reached him. So I did actually get to have a brief conversation with Tom Lehrer. But he is long retired from teaching, long retired from music and comedy. And he's an older man now, but he was in quite good shape when I spoke to him. But it was just like, when he put out the big Rhino compilation of his work, like his old albums were re-released, a couple of rarities, and they put it together in a wonderful box set, and he did a bit of promotion for that. He did some newspaper interviews, he went on Dr. Demento, but he did that like in 2000, and since then, no, he's a private person, doesn't want to deal with that anymore, he just wants to live deservedly. If anybody, we talk about deserving something, Tom Lehrer deserves to live out a quiet and happy rest of his life, probably occasionally looking at CNN or MSNBC or Fox News and going, there's a song in that, but I don't have to write it. Anyway, what I do have to write and create and do every single week here on Dave's Gone By is this show. But I love it to pieces, and I love it to hear from you. So if you like the show, if you have suggestions, if you have thoughts on stuff to do in future episodes, please contact me, and it's easy to do. You can either hit me right here on Facebook, whether it's during the show or during the week. Facebook page is Radio Dave Lefkowitz, Radio Dave Lefkowitz, or you can email me. Kind of old. It's funny to say that email is old-fashioned, but I guess it is. And my email address is davesgoneby@aol.com. DAVESGONEBY, davesgoneby@aol.com. So just email me to say you like the show, or that you have a problem with an aspect of the show, or you wish I would do this, or you miss Joyce, or whatever you want to say. I want to hear from you, because this is your show almost as much as mine. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope that if you missed part of this episode, or you want to hear parts of it again, we had that marvelous conversation with Ethan McSweeny earlier in the program. Remember, it'll be online in a day or so, as are all the archives at davesgoneby.com. davesgoneby.com is the place to find them, going all the way back to our very first episode of October 2002. This has been our 662nd visit to the Daverhood. And I love it, about as much as I did 15 and a half years ago. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love doing it, and I still do. Although now I have to worry about, gosh, my lips look a little juicy there, which never had to worry about that when it was just me and a microphone and a bunch of dials. But anyway, thank you, by the way, so many people for tuning in. Kat-Ann and Lorraine and Bert and Kathleen and Michael and David, and so many folks have tuned in. Some folks have messaged me. Remember, you can message me during the week as well. Thank you again to Rabbi Sol Solomon. Learn more about him at shalomdammit.com. Thank you especially to Ethan McSweeny. Go to the theater that he is now artistic director of. It is the American Shakespeare Center in Stanton, Virginia, not so far from Washington, D.C. And by the way, got to give a shout out and a thank you to Cameron McPherson of the Hodges Partnership for helping set up that interview with Ethan McSweeny. And speaking of interviews, what are we having in the weeks ahead on Dave's Gone By? We've got some wonderful guests. We have guests that you're going to want to be here for. Who, you ask? I'm happy to tell you. So in the near weeks ahead, we'll have, first of all, actor Sandy Helberg. Sandy Helberg. You might not have heard of him, but you'll know him. You'll know his face. You've seen him in 3, count them, 1, 2, 3, Mel Brooks movies. Among them, History of the World Part 2, and I think he was in Part 1, and History of, and High Anxiety. I'm a little talked out at 3.5 hours in, folks, but Sandy Helberg, he has stories to tell about working with Mel Brooks, about working in so many Hollywood movies. He also just so happens to be the father of an actor that you've heard of, Simon Helberg, who is Howard Wolowitz on The Big Bang Theory. And we'll probably talk a little bit about his family, too. So don't miss Sandy Helberg coming up, if not next week, then the week after. We also have Long Island comedian Stevie GB, a.k.a. Steve Gianturco. He's been a comedian now for 25 years. This is marking his 25th anniversary in comedy, staying mostly in Long Island and a little bit of Manhattan, but he's getting a lot more gigs now, and he's done a short film. So he'll be playing on Long Island a few times in August and then into September. If you don't know who he is, he's very cool, and he's pretty funny, and he works clean most of the time, and he has funny stories, great personality. You're going to hear us talk with Long Island comedian Stevie GB. That's coming up in the weeks ahead, as is a chat with a writer, a screenwriter named Carl Gottlieb. Carl is something of a legend in screenwriting parts, well, because he wrote for such TV shows as The Newhart Show, the original one, and All in the Family, and The Odd Couple. He worked on those. He co-wrote a little movie. You probably heard of this one. I'll use Worm to show it. Doo-dum. Or actually, it should be just like this. Doo-dum, doo-dum, doo-dum. That's right. Carl Gottlieb was one of the writers and adapters of a book by Peter Benchley called Jaws. He was a friend of Steven Spielberg. Spielberg called him in to help brush up the screenplay and make it more playable and cut out some things. And Gottlieb did that, and was not expecting Jaws to be the movie that it became, the juggernaut, the Jaws-gernaut that it became. So he has Jaws stories and Spielberg stories. He also co-wrote the Steve Martin movie, The Jerk, that Carl Reiner created. I mean, it's just like Carl Gottlieb. This man will be with us in the Daverhood in the weeks ahead. So to find out who's going to be on when, best way is to go to our website, davesgoneby.com, and of course, check our Facebook feed right here at Radio Dave Lefkowitz. Last thing I really want to say is, if you have people who would like and enjoy the show or portions of it, remember to invite them to tune in, to like our Facebook page, to become part of it, to follow us, or even, and this is the cool thing, to make sure you see us first. So when you have like or follow, click the thing that says see us first, and that will remind you instantly when we're on live on Saturday mornings, or the rare times during the week when we post something for you to see. And by the way, I also have a Twitter account. Radio Dave 2 is my Twitter account, Radio Dave 2, and Rabbi Sol is at Rabbi Sol Solomon. Well, it just remains for me to say, at 1:45 Mountain Time here on this Saturday, August 11th, is to wish you, all my UNC friends and people, one more week of fun. I know everybody's going to be rushing around trying to finish the stuff they had 2 months to do before they start teaching again, but try and find some time to enjoy the week ahead here in Colorado or wherever you are. I want to give a shout out to our friend in the Daverhood. I mentioned him before, Charlie Gross. He co-hosts that show Two on the Aisle, the theater review show on Manhattan Cable. Forgot to mention, Charlie, Mazel Tov, speaking of silver anniversaries, his 25th anniversary with his wonderful wife, Marjorie. They're celebrating that this weekend, I believe, either tomorrow or Monday, and they're having a little party in the temple where they first met. So a big, big mazel tov from me and Rabbi Sol to Charlie Gross and his wife, Margie, and to their kids as well. So, and what a great way to end it. I start the show like all these bad things happen this summer, such a crappy summer, and the hail, and the illness, and this, and I was like, I've done my radio show. I've talked to people, I've gotten things off my chest, I've had laughs and fun with you and with all the crazy stuff in my head, and I get to wish a very good friend of mine a most happy anniversary. You can see my whole attitude has changed. I'll be back to being miserable in half an hour, but right now, I shall sing. No, I won't sing, but Van Morrison will. Now this is way cool. I didn't even know about this. I had this album for a while, but they re-released Van Morrison's Moondance, his second best album, a couple of years ago. And it's one of those things where they re-release it, they remaster the original disc, but then they also get all these rarities and they clog it up with first takes and fifth takes and 12th takes. It's much of a muchness, as these things are. Even the Dylan bootlegs now are just way too much stuff. But if you poke around, if you look around for the gems, there are some in this Moondance collection, and I still cannot believe that this song did not make Moondance, or it would sound even better on maybe his band and street choir. But it's a Van Morrison tune that I actually knew because Toots and the Maytals did it on one of their albums years and years, decades ago. A great Toots and the Maytals album. Flew out of my head, unfortunately, at the moment. But anyway, I never knew that there were these unreleased takes of Van Morrison's version of this song, I Shall Sing, which are in a ska rhythm. The interesting thing is, back in 67 or 68, Morrison was doing ska, and it was Toots and the Maytals who made it a reggae number later on. Anyway, enough talk about the song. Let's play it, or as much of it as Facebook will let me. So I'll just say, have a wonderful week. I'll see you, good Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise, next Saturday, 9 to noon, right back here on Facebook and podcast on the Dave's Gone By Facebookio program of the stream I Shall Sing and Gone By.